Welcome back to the Minutemen Initiative. On today's episode, we're going to take a slightly different approach. This is actually spurred on from a recent Garand Thumb video that he did on the battle that's going on over there in Ukraine, or the war that's going on in Ukraine. And kind of going off of that video a little bit, we decided to get into the weeds on some of the things that were talked about and kind of get into some of that nuance and break things down with a little bit more added experience. Just from our military backgrounds, and then some of the information from the video and some of the research we've done outside of that video. But yeah, so if you haven't watched that Garand Thumb video, I highly recommend checking it out first and then coming back. But you could do the opposite as well. You could check out the episode here and then tune into the video, but both together are going to make a lot more sense, and I think there's a lot of valuable lessons to be learned from both of these things together. So again, learning some lessons from what's going on over in the Ukraine and Russia conflict. Sit back and enjoy the episode. What's going on, dude?
What is going on? What's going on in the world?
A lot of things are going on in the world.
P. Diddy getting weird with it?
Dude, what in the P. Diddy? I don't know anything about that. I've seen stuff about it, but I don't know much about it at all. So,
I don't know. It's been weird. It doesn't surprise me, though.
No. All those weird Hollywood people are doing the weirdest stuff. But we've been obviously been MIA a little bit. We've had a lot going on. I actually went on a little vacation there with the fam. So that's part of why we've been gone, because that would have been a week that we would have recorded normally. We try to put a podcast up every 2 weeks at a minimum, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So we're back, though. We're back to talk to you guys.
No, dude.
So this episode is actually one we've been kind of talking about for a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to preface this episode by saying that, let me back up for a second. So we're going to talk about the Ukraine conflict a little bit, Ukraine-Russia, and talk about some lessons that are being learned and can be learned from that conflict. We reference it a lot because it's modern. It's part of the modern warfare situation that's going on. It's a battle space that's current right now. So it's been referenced often in this podcast, in previous episodes. And there have been great lessons coming out of that conflict. Regardless of your personal opinions on it, the whole thing is, I even find myself being like, how is all that money getting dumped into there? And it's like, where's it going? So there's that whole side, but we're not going to focus on any of that. So I just want to say that because I feel like anytime this topic comes up, people are just like, how could you even talk about lessons when they're tax dollars? It's like, dude, our tax dollars are being blown every which way.
Dude, yeah.
They've been getting blown since before you existed. So, and people are waking up to it, but in contrast, it's getting worse than it's ever been. But yeah, that's a conversation for a different day. We're going to take a look at the actual conflict and the warfare that's happening over there, and how it's a pretty good reflection of what.
Regardless of where the money ends up, there's still a war that's going on there. There's still Ukrainians that are fighting for their country, and there's still Russians that are fighting to gain back that country.
Yeah.
So, regardless what you want to say, like wherever the money ends up, yeah. That's trash, but it doesn't really matter. We're focusing on the war. We're not focusing on what America's part is in it, I guess.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean that we're like pro-Ukraine war, but
no.
I'm also not pro-Russia. I've never been pro-Russia either. So that's like a weird I don't know. There's such a weird kind of perspective in modern culture now where it's like you have to be on one side or the other.
I'm pro-America.
Yeah. And being pro-America is like bad now.
Yeah.
Nationalist Christian. But it's just crazy, dude. Yeah, it's just stupid. Anyways, but there is a lot of valuable information to learn. And the reason I said that this episode's a little bit different is because we're actually kind of structuring this around a recent video that Garand Thumb did on Ukraine. And he had two guys on that have been fighting in Ukraine, and they basically came on a recent episode. I'll have that episode linked in the description. So if you haven't seen it, you can either go watch it right now and then come back to the episode, or listen to this episode and then go watch it. Because I think either way, it'll tie together. But you should treat this like a twofold lesson.
Yeah.
Because the video is going to give a lot of, and I think a lot of people have already seen it. It's been very popular. We shared it back when it came out because it's very good. Not because it's like a really well-made video or anything like that. It's pretty basic in regards to that. The information's great in it. Steven and I have watched it several times, and we've watched it with some other guys that we train with and stuff, and compared a lot of notes and talked a lot about it. And I was like, man, I think we should maybe do a podcast episode that kind of gets more into the weeds and breaks down some of that little nuance that they start to talk about, because they make reference to things, but they're kind of like catchphrasey. It's like, oh, well, you don't want to do this because this will happen. And yeah, ha, 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 and they just kind of like move on.
Yeah.
And and I was sitting there after I watched it like the second time, I was like, man, there's some really good, wise nuggets that these guys are dropping as experienced warfighters in the modern battle space that I think could use a little bit more breakdown, and maybe even a little bit more explanation. So a lot of the stuff that they talk about is very basic infantryman skills. I think pretty much everybody knows our background by now, but Steven and I were both U.S. Army infantrymen, paratroopers actually. Which is kind of funny because the one guy in the video actually same exact background as us. We both served for a decent amount of time in the U.S. Army as enlisted infantrymen, and have varying experiences there. So we're going to kind of bring a little bit more of our knowledge into this and kind of start breaking this stuff down. With that being said, neither of us have fought in Ukraine, so we're just going off of what we were told in the video and a lot of other research that we've done. It's something that we've been kind of following for a long time. I think anybody in this space, anyone that's trying to kind of be that modern Minuteman, anybody that's trying to really take this seriously and try to be that community defender, protector, someone that's willing to stand up for what's right and fight for their community. If you're not paying attention to modern conflicts, then that's pretty foolish. I think you should absolutely be learning from, not just our enemies, but learning from some of these conflicts that we aren't really involved in. I mean, I guess we're involved in them by proxy, but even Israel and the Gaza or Hamas conflict, we probably won't do a video on that one because it's honestly very similar to what our own conflict was in Afghanistan. It's fighting a very underdeveloped, very disadvantaged. It's a tier 1 force against a very low level kind of.
And that tier one force is taking their gloves off as well.
Yeah,
as opposed to what America did when fighting over in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah,
like you pissed them off, and they don't care. And they don't care what we think either.
No, they don't. That's something people need to get through their heads, is that that's a different country. They have,
Israel's been fighting for their entire existence, so they don't give a crap what the rest of the world thinks about how they fight.
Yeah. And it's they're doing stuff that's pretty like, whoa, that's crazy. Are you serious? It's like, well, I mean, war's nasty. So, even our conflict in Afghanistan, nasty stuff happened that, will never be known, but it happened over there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes things got to get rough. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that today too, because some of that comes up in this Ukraine topic. And I think it's very, very important to recognize and definitely understand as somebody that is trying to have that mentality of, you know what, I need to be ready in case something goes terribly wrong. And also both of those conflicts are proof that and I've said this before, but that line between what we have today with a civil, quote unquote, civil society and all out warfare is a lot thinner than people think it is.
Yeah.
And I actually find that interesting that at the end of the Ukraine video, one of the guests he had on was a guy from the UK, a British guy. And he basically ends the video by saying, for all the people in the UK that think this can't happen to you, he's like, we have a lot of uncertain times ahead, and you need to stop with that complacent mentality. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically calls out his own community or his own country and says, like, there's a lot of complacent mentality and thoughts of like, oh, that'll never happen here. And he's like, this isn't far away from the UK, and things can get bad fast. Yep. So. Yeah, and it's true, and it's true for Americans too. The whole time he's talking to the UK, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, the same is true for Americans.
Yeah, while we're letting, thousands upon thousands of immigrants come across our southern border, and we're just sitting here like thinking that nothing can happen to us, and it's like,
oh yeah,
we have no control of what's coming in and out of our country just because we're separated from Russia and all that. Like the eastern side of the world doesn't mean that they can't attack us through our southern borders. So.
Yeah, for sure. It's honestly something that we might try to do an episode on, because I've got some contacts down there that are working in that space, and I've been getting a little bit of information, and I'm trying to get somebody to come on. I don't want to just sit up here and pontificate about what's actually happening there, and because we're in Alaska, I mean, ultimately we're way far away from that, so we don't have a lot of personal experience there, but that's something to be very concerned about, and it is directly related to that previous statement about how thin that line really is, and we don't know. So with that being said, going back to the topic at hand here, if you haven't seen the video, like I said, you can either pause this now, go check it out, because there's going to be some stuff we talk about that if you haven't seen the video might seem a little bit random, because we're going to kind of reference the video a few times. It is a long video. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long, I think, maybe a little shorter than that. But it is very worth the watch. And it's one of his better videos just because it's good, solid, well-rounded information that, surprisingly, yes, it's specifically about Ukraine and what's happening there, but it applies to a lot of just basic soldiering skills, and we'll break a lot of those down. So, again, don't really care what your viewpoint is on that whole conflict. It's amazing how much flack Garand Thumb got because of that, because it's a politically charged conflict. Cool. Yeah, we all know, like, that's a separate issue. That doesn't change the fact, like what you said, Stephen, that doesn't change the fact that guys are fighting and dying over there. Yeah. It's a real fight.
It's a real war. It's not, you got some crazy tinfoil hat conspiracies going on about how it's all made up war and all this stuff. I think that's ended now, but that was originally going on when it first kicked off, and it's like, no, dude, it's a legit war. I know a dude from Ukraine, and he knows people are actually fighting over there, so it's like, it's not. Yeah, and I know guys that have fought over there. Yeah, exactly. So
we'll try to maybe have some of them on in the future, but to talk about it. But it's it's a legit conflict, and there are definitely lessons to be learned. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start to break it down. The very first thing they get into in the video is talking about kit, gear, equipment. We're not going to spend too much time here. I get why they did it. I'm actually glad they did, because it they ended up pointing out and illuminating some key things that are really important to understand when setting up your kit. But we're not going to break down like their individual kit. They kind of go into like the gear items and stuff. And
it's nothing that's like groundbreaking or anything like that for sure.
And it's a very, I get why they did it. It's very on brand for a Garand Thumb video. Like that's kind of how he got his start, was breaking down cool kit and talking about guns and gear and weapon setups and stuff. And that's awesome. But the things to take away are how personalized their kit is and how set up it is for a lot of it's very adaptable. It's a lot of big general purpose pouches. They talk a lot about, I have this pouch is just open for me to throw like random stuff in, that I come across or fill with this. And
war trophies. No, I'm just kidding.
No. The Geneva Convention has entered the chat.
Yeah.
No. But there's some key things that they really zero in on, and we'll kind of go through some of those. But something that I really wanted to speak to is, and I've seen it a lot recently. So kit IQ, we'll call it kit IQ. Kit IQ has really gotten better over the last like 2 years. Seeing a lot of just better understanding of, LBE, load bearing equipment, better understanding of, how to integrate around body armor, good use of like cord management and, strap discipline and having clean straps and stuff. All that's really good. And people are actually getting really squared away. And when I say people, I don't mean like ex-military guys, because those guys should be pretty squared away, because you literally will get, forced to do a bunch of stupid exercises if you look like just a bag of stuff.
Bag of dongs.
Yeah. We'll keep it PG rated, but sorry. So yeah, that's ingrained into you, but you're prepared citizen, you're people that are taking this really seriously and investing in good quality kit. They're really building some good loadouts.
Yeah.
The thing I'm seeing though, and I'm seeing it often, is everyone's trying to buy like the end all be all. Like I just want this, I want this flick or this LBE setup, and I'm going to set it up and it's good for everything. And it's like, dude, your kit, it's like,
it's person to person for one. Like there's some things that just aren't going to work for, do you know how many times people reach out and like, what chest rig is that you guys are wearing? And it's like, we're running the Plat Attacks or whatever. And it's like, dude, do you know how many guys I know that have tried to run the Plat Attack and they hate it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, a lot of guys, I got in a long conversation with a guy that actually I'll shout him out. It's Adapter Die, and he's got a pretty awesome Instagram, and he's always testing gear. And he tried the Plat Attack and did not like it.
Yeah,
and we were talking back and forth about it, and he's like, how do you wear it? Blah blah blah. And what it came down to is just two different body types. I think. Like there was pockets that he couldn't access because I think he's just a little bit smaller than I am. And then for me, it was like, no, it's perfect. Like I love where that lays. So there's just different things are going to work very differently. And it's the personalized aspect that I really want to zero in on here, because your gear, you shouldn't be. Now, I don't want to say don't take advice from people or don't look at good kit and see how it's being put together, because you can get a lot of inspiration from that.
Yeah.
But be willing to take a risk. Dude, I've bought a lot of kit that it just sits in a closet now.
Yeah.
And I don't use it because it didn't work. And that is a worthy investment. I think a lot of people are scared about, like, I'm using air quotes here, wasting money. You're not wasting money, because you're doing your due diligence of trying to figure out, is this going to work? Is this going to interface the way I think it will? Is it going to hold my equipment properly? Whatever that is.
Yeah.
You got to. It's a
unfortunately, just trying it in a box store or something like that. Like if you have a local store that has chest rigs and plate carriers and things like that, unfortunately, trying it unloaded without your equipment in it isn't going to really give you the full story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where you almost got to load it all the way up and
take it out and put in good miles with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's like trying on shoes. It's like you can see that you can get an idea that it fits, but until you really go out and break those shoes in, you're not going to know if you like them or not, really. Yeah. It's similar. Now, I think the other thing I see, too, is that people try to just load their kit up and fill everything up, fill every single pocket, and then try to just be like, well, I've got everything in here that I could ever need. That just isn't going to work.
No.
There's too many variables. You don't need a lot of that gear too. Like it's okay to have empty pockets, kind of going back to how those guys had specific pouches that are like, I don't keep anything in here. This is just so I can, if I need extra room, I can throw something in there or whatever, The other thing too is the use of like foam for padding for sensitive items like, night vision, thermal units, sensitive electronics. Dude, that's what I tried to say. Not sensitive items, dude. That brought me back there.
Yeah. Bring out your sensitive items.
Yeah, but that's important. That's a pretty big deal. And that doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, there's a few companies out there making cool like shockproof pouches and stuff for that gear. That's awesome. If you want to use that, go for it. But those guys are just rolling up some foam and shoving it in there. And dude, I don't know. There is something like even in the video, Garand Thumb's like, that's good right there, and just he likes it or whatever. And it's just there's something about it. It's just kind of like what,
dude, your Garand Thumb impersonation.
Something to learn about, Ben. But lots of nasal passage obstruction when you do a Garand Thumb impersonation.
Almost Haley strategic ass.
No, he does lots of breathing for the Haley strategic.
I think his septum's kind of blocked.
Okay, we're gonna no stop it. So yeah, so that's a good portion of the video. Now, some things that they talk about that are kind of more related to just important things to think about with your overall kit, and just some of their setups that apply to where they're fighting that are important. So one thing they touch on multiple times in the video is minimizing reflections, and doing like kill flash, you know, or anti-reflective device, running ARDs on everything, taping over any kind of lens,
GPS screens.
Yep.
Things like that. Yeah.
Anything, and also you really need to break up the outline. I don't remember if they said this specifically, but just from our experience, I'll throw this in there, and you can probably speak to this a lot coming from the reconnaissance background. But anything circular is not natural.
Yeah.
And you want to break that up. Like something that I'll forget about often when we go out and train is I like watches. I'm always wearing some kind of watch. That's important to break up somehow. Like, even just like a piece of tape over the lens, something like that. Those watches reflect like crazy. How many times you sitting in church and you're sitting there listening to the preacher and you just see these like reflective lasers flashing around. It looks like a disco show. And it's people's phones and watches just reflecting light all over the place in there. Dude, that's happening all the time, and you might not even see it. So anything that can reflect light needs to be minimized, needs to be secured and covered up.
Yeah.
They talk about medical. This is the tried and true SOP. I mean, this is what we did when we went to Afghanistan, but tourniquet for every limb. So you're carrying a minimum of 4 tourniquets. They talk about that. I think he specifically asked how many tourniquets they carry, and they say 1 for each limb. Yeah. That is just standard. That's been that way. That comes straight out of, American/NATO warfighting. I mean, that is like the standard. We get it often. People come in and ask, how many tourniquets do I need? It's like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, for like my, crap hits the fan kit. I'm like, well, then you need at least 4. And they're always like, what? It's like, well, you got 4 limbs,
Yeah.
Oh, well, are they going to all get, it's like, well, no, but it's just a good rule of thumb to have 4, because you might use them on somebody else. You might, but so that's one thing that I really wanted to just zero in on. And then with that, they were running very low profile IFAKs, like the Roll 1.
Yeah.
That you can get. I think Faro Concepts makes it.
Probably.
It's Roll 1. It's just like a rolled up med sleeve that sits in like an elastic pouch, basically, and you can pull it out either left or right. And there's a lot of kits like that out there. Steven and I have always been big fans of really low profile kits. We run, like on our chest rig, we run the Eagle IFAK rig series IFAK. It's very low profile, very easy to deploy. It's got everything we need in it for, immediate life-saving equipment. So pretty common stuff there. One other thing I'll throw in there is if you're working with a team, have an SOP for your med kits, for your IFAKs.
Yeah.
Have some kind of SOP for where they are, so everybody kind of roughly knows, like, okay, it's going to be on your left side or whatever. Or have it, if you don't have that, the next best thing, or even probably the first best thing, would be to have them clearly marked. Any pouch that has medical gear in it should have like a medical cross or something on it.
Yeah.
So you can, so if you're hurt, that can be accessed by somebody, and they're not playing, check a pouch where they're just going through your pouches and trying to figure out where the heck your medical gear is. Yeah, and have medical gear. Like, that's,
yeah.
If you're carrying ammo, the next thing to put in is medical gear.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is. Sorry. I still see kid all the time out there that's like, yeah, I can carry 12 magazines. It's like, oh, sick. Where's your IFAK? Like, well, I kind of keep it. I don't know. I need to find a place for it. And it's just like, dude, you got to have medical gear. Yeah. So they talk a lot about fragmentation too. And talk about side plates specifically. And we get asked a lot about side plates. That's been a common question, especially questions back when we did our Minutemen layout series, where we talked about good solid gear for the modern day Minuteman. We didn't really get into side plates much, I don't think, in that episode where we did armor.
No, not really.
Part 4 where we talk about armor. I think we breezed kind of over it. And I'm going to say now what we said then. It's mission specific. If you need to run side plates, or I'm sorry, if you're fighting in like a very kinetic war, like Ukraine, where you're dealing with artillery and mortars and mines and lots of frag weaponry,
fragmentation,
then you should have side plates. If you're doing what those Israelis are doing right now and doing like super tight, close quarter, room after room after room, complex after complex, with grenades just going off and just tons of rounds punching through thin material, side plates, front and side plates. If you're out in the woods, like scouting somebody from 4 kilometers away and you're stealthing around, probably don't need plates at all. So there's a give and take. Now, SOPs come into play, if you are in some kind of a military unit, military units are going to require whatever, might require one thing or the other. So that is what it is, but use common sense. If you're dealing with a lot of very kinetic, dynamic fighting environments, then you're probably going to want more armor.
Yeah.
So
I guess like while you were in Afghanistan, your plate the plate carriers that were issued didn't have side plates in them.
We ran side plates.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the IOTVs obviously were set up, but those were like for on patrol and vehicles. So that was more dealing with IEDs and.
Yeah. So for dismounted stuff, we'd wear plate carriers, but we had side plate pouches.
Okay.
Yep. But they sucked. They're really uncomfortable. They've gotten a lot better, but the ones we had back then were they would rub the crap out of you on your sides and stuff. And I did a bunch of like personal augmentation to make them more comfortable for long patrols and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's big. I mean, but one of our biggest threats over there was IEDs. So they were set up for vehicles and for anti-personnel. So that's kind of similar to mines, and actually they used a lot of mines because I'll probably jump back to that when we get into mines in this episode. But there was a lot of old Russian ordnance that was left over there that they would repurpose. So direct engagement with small arms was a lot fewer and far between than having to deal with the potential of stepping on a mine or an IED. That was a very, very common threat. So there was definitely running side plates and front plates and stuff. So back plates too, obviously.
I'm not going to be running away from the enemy.
Yeah, dude. What in the world? Black Hawk dumb, dude. No, dude. So one other thing they pointed out, which I found pretty interesting, was they all had some kind of lightweight equipment for dragging casualties. And that really speaks to what they're dealing with over there. That was not as common for me when I was overseas fighting in Afghanistan. We had procedures for that, but it was very specific to the medic and the medics team, the emergency response team. They kind of talked about it like they all have something that they can latch onto somebody and yard them out of there if they need to, which, leads me to believe that people are dropping pretty often.
Yeah.
And that again goes to show how kind of wild it is over there. The way they were doing it was just, they're doing those like helicopter safety lanyards where they kind of came out of the special operations community where guys would be clipped in, to a helo while they were hanging off the side of it or whatever. Not like dangling, but I just mean they're sitting in the door, and they click in for safety. Yeah. And then they pop it and go. They're using that kind of a thing, but more for casualty dragging.
I had guys that actually ran a very similar setup that I was in with. They had literally those exact same things, and they would just like if they could clip it into your drag handle on your plate carrier or on your body armor or whatever.
Yeah.
And just lock it in there and then just back out while you're able to still engage, or flip it around and be able to actually drag like standard. Not everyone was doing it, but
right.
I wouldn't say that was very like some new great idea that they have going on, because I've seen it before. So
yeah, no, I wasn't saying it was a new idea. I just mean that it seems like they're all doing it. Which again, it's battlefield specific, but they're dealing with a lot of casualties.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, it's an important lesson. It's a pretty important lesson to see. They talked a lot about smokes and frags. Grenades are a huge part of what they're doing over there. They talked a lot about how valuable smoke grenades are. That's a tough one for the, kind of modern day Minuteman, especially for Americans, because it's a little bit harder to get your hands on that. But there are some pretty effective companies out there for making them specifically for like airsoft and milsim events.
Yeah.
And we've been playing with some of them, and we're going to get a lot more hands-on with some here really soon. So we'll come back around on that. But they're obviously not as potent as mil-spec ones.
Yeah, but I think there's a measurement of smoke, output.
Yeah,
that's illegal for like civilians, which is unfortunate. Yeah. I don't know why it's even controlled. It's kind of similar to the whole full power laser thing. Like, why do we care? Like, I understand that it can hurt people, but at the same time, it's like, so can chop saws.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what are we worried about here?
Yeah. It's dumb. There's so many dumb things like that.
Or like laser levels.
Yeah.
Like that construction people use all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it seems like it's always kind of isolated to that military style equipment. They keep that pretty regulated.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with, but yeah, so I just wanted to point out the smoke. obviously frag grenades. Frag grenades are a staple of warfare. Like, they're going to be around. Not really something we can get our hands on. But if things were going wild and all out warfare was happening, then you'd probably be able to get your hands on them. So, but smoke grenades are something that I think more people should pay attention to and start practicing with, because they can help screen movements. You can use them for signaling. You can use them for marking things. They're valuable. You can do a lot with smoke.
Yep.
So, they were using, another thing I noticed was their use of camouflage. They're using just tried and true camouflage techniques. They're running scrim on their helmets. They're, wearing camo. I mean, there's been a lot of positive identification issues over in the Ukraine. So, they're running, like, in some cases running big, like, at least for a while. They didn't really talk much about that in the video, but how they're running the yellow blue tape and stuff like that. Not sure. They didn't get into that too much. I know early in the war that was a big deal. I think the lines have become a lot more solidified now, because it's the kind of the gained ground and lost ground is developed pretty rigidly. So there's a pretty specific delineation between, like, good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
Now, but I know things are ever changing, but they did touch on, like, the use of scrim on their helmets and scrim on their gear, reducing their signature, and then using, in the winter months, using like white tape and stuff like that to break up the outline and kind of blend into the backdrop of the snow. And we've talked about that in the past, and really it's just a game of matching contrasts. If you're, especially in a high contrast environment like a snowy environment, it's really important to understand how to properly camouflage yourself in the snow. So we've got a whole slide post on that on Instagram that goes over camouflage if you're interested in wintertime camouflage specifically. I think it's our last one we have. I haven't done one in a long time, so been kind of busy with other things here recently, but so if you want more information on specifically high contrast camo like in snow, then go check that out. They also really touched in on I guess they more alluded to it just by the positions that they each had, but I want to talk about it, and that's having position-specific gear. Like, for example, one of the guys in there said he was a team leader, and he had multiple radios, a lot more admin gear and map reading equipment, things like that. And I think that's important, because sometimes there's a misconception of like, oh, I got to buy all this stuff and I got to carry all this stuff, and you don't. In fact, if you're working in a team, you can identify people that are good at certain things and fill certain roles better than others, and then they can carry gear specific to that role, and you can share the load a little bit. Not everybody needs to carry, a bunch of, I don't know, I can't think of any example right now, but not everybody needs like a full-blown medic kit. Not everybody needs to carry
setup.
Yeah. Not everybody needs to carry like a full navigation kit that's got like big maps in it and stuff. And like, everyone should be able to land nav, and everyone should be able to do medical, like, first aid medical skills. Yeah. I'm not saying that means you just don't learn those things. It means you're just not going to carry all that stuff. Yeah. You can't carry everything.
You have a smaller variation of it.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in the kit. Like I said, I didn't want to spend a huge amount of time there. There's just some things that stood out to me in the video that I wanted to kind of elaborate on more. But definitely, if you haven't seen the video, I'm not saying skip that part, watch it, because there's just some nuance that comes out of the conversation that you could maybe take some value from. So that leads us to the next section. And this is probably one of the biggest modern changes to the battlefield, and that's drones.
Yeah.
And if you haven't looked into how much the battlefield's changed by the use of drones, I encourage you to, because it's changed everything. And And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through here, and I'm not talking like Predator drones, because the U.S. military's used drones for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm talking like a $200 drone you can buy from Amazon and zip in somewhere with some explosives attached to it and just rip somebody up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like commonplace. I just saw a video the other day of some Russian factory that's just mass producing these little FPV drones, which is stands for first person view. And I'll talk about those in a second, but drones are becoming more and more attainable. They're becoming cheaper. They're becoming better. I mean, they have drones now that have full thermal, like high resolution, 640p thermal cameras.
Yeah.
And full IR, you can fly them high enough that no one can hear them.
Yeah, and anybody can get them.
Yeah.
It's not like...
They're not regulated.
No. Which is good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. So drones are such a... I mean, it's going to change. It's going to continue to change everything. They're going to get better and better and better, and I don't think it'll be long until that's like one of the primary ways that war is fought.
Yeah.
Is using like swarm drones and, some kind of, obviously we already have super high end drones that the military uses that can do advanced targeting and, fire missions and stuff like that. But I think we're going to start to see more of that from consumer level drones. I think it's only a matter of time before people start to put the pieces together to make that. So, I mean, it's already being done with FPV drones, but I'm saying like platforms that'll be able to deliver ordnance and then accurately and then actually target things and stuff like that. Like, I don't think we're far from that from the consumer level.
No.
So it might already be happening. I don't know. So it's really important to understand drones. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and say this now. If you or someone in your group is not actively researching drones and becoming a subject matter expert on drones, then you're wrong. It's one of those things that we just have to deal with now. It's like, I mean, it's like having optics on your gun now. Like, no one's running iron sights anymore. Like, yeah, you should still understand iron sights, but everyone's got optics now.
Yeah.
No serious person is like not running optics. I mean, you get your weirdo out there that's still like, I still run irons because of an EMP strike. And you're just like, well, then why aren't you running a scope? Like, dude, optics don't just evaporate when an EMP happens. Anyways, drones are just part of the battle space now. So you have a few different types of drones. You've got kind of your standard drone, which they refer to in the video as quadcopters. They say octocopters too, but this is going to be your standard, like remote controlled. It's got a little screen on the controller,
like a Mavic.
Yeah, like your DJI Mavic Pros. Stuff like that. Now these drones are they have a lot of engineering put into them. Like they're able to kind of
self-stabilize
self-stabilize and all that stuff.
They're easy to fly, basically.
Yeah. They're bigger. They can carry more weight, usually. They've got longer operating times, I'm using generalizations. I know there's outliers that, some drone nerd's going to just be like, it's like, yeah, dude, sick. That's awesome. But generally, we're saying generally here.
Also, I mean, you can just run battery extensions off of them too, which you see that all the time over there. Like literally just giant batteries taped onto the top of them.
Yeah, just plugged in.
Yeah,
yeah, dude. They're it's wild how rudimentary they are. A lot of them. So you've got those, and then you've got an FPV drone, which is a first-person view drone, and they're actually they kind of originally started as racing drones. They're used for like a racing sport. Is kind of where they originated, but those things have basically become munition delivery systems. They're just like
they're tow missiles,
dude. They are. They're literally you wear a set of goggles, so that's why it's first person view. So it's your view, like what the drone sees is what you see, and you guide it in like Dude, it's like
it's funny because everyone's like, well, what's the difference between that and like your standard, like DJI Mavic? Because it's like, well, that's technically first person view too, because I mean, you're looking on a screen.
Yeah,
you don't have goggles on, but you're looking through a screen. But it's like, well, there's a huge difference between the drones. Like,
massive difference.
Yeah.
The FPV drones are pretty much flown all manual. So they're flying those things. Like they don't have, some of them do, but they don't all have like stabilization. You have to manually do it with the sticks. And if you watch the guys, they're usually flying by, they have a controller, but they're wearing the goggles. So they're just kind of like, they always are just looking off into the heavens, like with their mouth open, like, because they're just looking at a screen, but usually they're pinching the joysticks with their index finger and their thumb. And they're the minute, just tedious little movements they're making to make that thing fly, is pretty impressive because they're basically changing, power with the different propellers and stuff, and it causes them to turn and go up and down and go fast, and they are fast. I mean, they have ones that'll go 150 miles an hour. Just, they're just like, look up videos of FPV drone speeds, and you'll see how radically fast they are and maneuverable they are, especially by a pilot that knows what they're doing. But it's literally like if you ever play Call of Duty and you get the like missile strike and you like have a first person view and you're flying it down, and you're guiding it in on some poor idiot that's running around and they're trying to hide from you. That's what's happening with FPV drones.
Yeah.
So what are they being used for? Well, the more standard, the Mavic style or the quadcopter style drones are being used for spotting. Like they're going out and spotting targets. They're going out and doing reconnaissance. So they're flying them high, getting a large view of the AO, the area of operation, and they're trying to spot threats. They're trying to spot booby traps. They're spotting trenches, tanks, whatever, artillery, doing reconnaissance stuff. A lot of people too, I've seen this a lot in the industry. People are like, yeah, drones are dumb because you can hear them. It's like, no, you can't, dude. Like, as soon as you fly these things up a couple 100 feet in the air, you can't hear them anymore. I encourage you to look into this.
It depends on the environment, obviously. But yeah.
But we've played a lot with drones, and you can hear them when they're low. But as soon as you get them up in the sky and they just disappear. They're just gone. You can't hear them anymore.
Yep.
Which is scary. And they're small, so they're hard to see. They use them for spotting. The other thing they use them for is payload delivery. So because they're a bigger, more stable platform, they'll fly them in high. And I'm sure everybody that has paid attention to this even a little bit has seen the videos on Instagram and YouTube and stuff and just on the internet of them dangling little grenades off the end of them and just dropping them on people.
Yeah, dude,
just
grenades or mortars down. Or whatever they have.
Yeah, dude, it's wild. I remember when I first started seeing that, I was like, what?
Yeah, I'll never forget that video of the I assume it's a Ukrainian soldier or something. He's like taking a grenade and like placing it in a cup in one of those things to like keep the spoon from deploying. Like the cup's like holding the spoon in place.
Yeah.
And like as soon as he lets go, somehow the attachment wasn't good, so the cup drops. And you just see all those guys like bolt in every direction, like all the Ukrainians like, oh crap, because dude, that grenade just goes off.
Yeah, we're talking rudimentary stuff here. But it's working, and it's working good. So then what are FPV drones being used for? Well, we kind of already talked about it, but they are being used for direct engagement. They're literally being used for fire missions.
Yeah.
Those things are, and they're being used in conjunction. They talked about that quite a bit. So you've got a spotter drone. So one of the quadcopters that's going to fly in high, take a position that's able to identify where they are, and then they're just going to barrage that threat with FPV drones.
Or call for fire missions,
right,
or something like that, indirect fire. So,
yeah, indirect fire, which we'll get into that in a little bit.
But I'm just saying they're using the reconnaissance drones for basically building missions off of indirect fire and artillery and things like that. So.
Yeah, which is scary.
Yeah, whether that's through FPV drones or through more traditional like artillery.
Yeah. But yeah, so the FPV drones specifically, they're going to come in. They don't really use them for the FPV drones aren't really being, from what I gathered, aren't really being used much for, spotting and stuff like that. They are directly for flying in fast and rapid and targeting things. They're flying them into tanks. They're flying them into blindage positions, which are like reinforced positions in trenches. They're flying them inside of buildings, and they're flying them into groups of patrols, and they're just blowing up. Yeah. They're on a suicide mission. The drone is like, it's a one-way mission for the drone. It doesn't get recovered.
Yeah.
It flies in and blows up. Yeah, and that's pretty wild. So one thing they really talked about a lot is drone ID, being able to identify them mainly by sound, because they do both make a very different sound.
Yeah.
Again, easy to look up. Something that all the stuff we've talked about so far is easy research, easy homework, and I encourage you to go do it, because again, this is just part of it now. Those FPV drones are really high pitch, like sound a lot more like a wasp or something. So, they're just very like zippy and high pitched sounding. Whereas the other ones have a more like neutral tone, still kind of an annoying sound, but it's more and they kind of yeah, dude, I'll just provide you with the accurate the noise descriptions here. No, go look them up and start learning the difference. It's
look
amazing.
them up and then get your hands on them if you can.
Yeah.
That is one thing to consider, from like the modern Minuteman perspective, like just going in on suicide missions with your FPV drone. Like, unless you've got a lot of money, you're not going to have a lot of those. So
yeah,
it's like you can tell that they're being, obviously Russia and Ukraine are being funded. We're going back to this, but like China's feeding Russia and we're feeding Ukraine.
Yeah.
So it's like they kind of have like unlimited supplies in a way.
America and China proxy war is all it is.
Yeah, it's weird.
But anyways, yeah, no, that's a good point, is that it's a limited resource. They're going to run out eventually. But I mean, right now they're a huge part of the battle space. The one thing I wanted to say though is that if you were able to allocate a lot of these and acquire a lot of these, dude, you could literally run your own fire missions as such a small what? I'm just
where you get shut down.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you had to,
yeah,
I think it's really important for that Minuteman focus. You could be lethal to some big logistical machines with some little drones.
Yeah,
like you could steer your own spotting and your own fire missions. You'd have to have several. You'd have to have a good, robust delivery system, and you'd have to have a lot of FPV drones, and you'd have to be really good at reacting to indirect, because your signals are probably going to get intercepted, and people. It depends on who you're fighting against too.
Yeah.
It sounds like Russia's not very good at least not anymore, at intercepting signals as much. And I don't know. I don't know if they're jamming over there. Maybe they are. I know there's a lot of American tech over there.
A lot of that tank footage stuff is pretty interesting that the FPV drones like lose.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the Russians. I'm talking about, they definitely are. So, and they're definitely running some kind of a signal jammer on their vehicles.
Yeah.
Which is pretty typical. We did that in Afghanistan to evade command detonation for signal detonation stuff for IDs. Basically, it's called the Duke system for U.S. military. And you can look it up. I'm not sure. I think it's open information. I think it's open source, but I'm not going to say too much about it. I can't remember. That's one of those things that I'm going to
plead the fifth.
Yeah. Look up the Duke signal jamming system. Do a little homework. Whatever you find, I'm sure. Basically, it jams signals. It works in like a mesh network kind of thing. But yeah, that's one of those things we weren't. I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a long time, so I'm not sure what I can say about that.
Yeah.
But and I don't want to give away important information that could harm U.S. troops. But anyways, I think a lot of that's open source. But basically, the Russians are running something similar. And the evidence of that is Steve and I have looked at a lot of drone footage where drones are flying in and once they get within, I don't know, what did you say, like 25 yards of that vehicle, they lose their image.
Yeah,
the signal gets interrupted, but it's too late. They've already lined them up and they're already moving in, and they've delivered that payload. So that's tough. That's a hard thing to evade. You know what? I'm really surprised that they haven't started running yet, and maybe they just don't have the resources for it. But I haven't seen this in any of the videos. Is netting around the tanks? Have you seen any of that?
No, like to catch basically.
Yeah, because we did that in Afghanistan. All of our vehicles had anti-RPG netting.
It's looks like you can look it up. So
the Duke system.
I don't know how much information they give on it, but you can look up at least the name and what it is. So
okay, so yeah, it's that's cool. And it just said it's a signal jammer and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't click on the.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but basically, there's any kind of modern military they're gonna be using signal jamming.
Yeah.
Obviously, drones are using signals. It has to communicate. The controller has to communicate to the drone, and the drone's got to communicate back to the operator too. So that there's an important signal interchange that's happening there. But yeah, I'm really surprised, and I guess I didn't think about this until just now. But the netting thing is something to think about.
For vehicles, you're saying?
Yeah.
How would you do it?
We literally ran them in Afghanistan. Our vehicles had literally these big nets that were mounted to the side of the vehicle, like they were on a frame. The frame just gets mounted to the side of the vehicle.
It just catches the
RPGs would hit them and blow up because an RPG is a shape charge.
Dude, Charlotte's Web, dude.
Yeah, Charlotte's Web. That's so random. No, it's literally these. It's like a square. It's just a square. Like they're like very thin cables.
Yeah,
and they have these heavy. Like in everywhere that the square intersects. So everywhere there's a T in the netting, there's this little suspended, like dense piece of metal. Like those nets are heavy. Like they're robust.
And maybe that's the problem. I know, like at least early on in the war, depending on the time of the year, like Russia was getting their vehicles stuck like crazy.
But for drones, they wouldn't need that big heavy netting. That was anti RPG. It's because RPGs is a rocket propelled shape charge, and so as soon as that makes contact with armor, it if you're not familiar with the shape charge, it's shaped in a way to direct blast, and so they're designed to penetrate armor. And especially like the more modern, they weren't as prevalent where we were in Afghanistan, but there were parts in Afghanistan where they had the modern RPG 7. I don't remember the full nomenclature, but they were very effective at penetrating armor. And once that penetrates the armor, it makes a little hole, and then all that metal rapidly cools and then bounces around on the inside and just shrapnels the crap out of the inside, and it's lethal. So those nets would cause that shape charge to explode prematurely. And so it would,
because
it's suspended off the side of the vehicle. So,
yeah, it was suspended off the side of the vehicle, but it would react like it was going through armor because of those dense metal.
Yeah,
basically.
And it didn't even have to hit one of those. I mean, it was almost impossible for it not to, because they were very often. I'd say they were, 2 inches apart or something all throughout the thing, maybe more than that. But even if that shape charge hits the net, it's going to change its direction.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's punching right through the net. The net doesn't stop it, but it'll change its direction, and then as soon as its direction's changed and it makes contact with something, it's going to send that shape charge. But if the shape charge isn't perfectly pointed, right into the armor, it won't be effective. The armor will stop it.
Okay.
So that's kind of off topic from drones, but I'm just saying, and maybe they are. If you know more about the Ukraine conflict and you're aware that that's something that they're doing, let us know. Reach out. We'd love to hear more about it.
But I know they're using it as overhead coverage for inside trenches and whatnot, but I don't know if they're using it over vehicles.
Man, that would be an easy, because those FPV drones, there's no way they're delivering. There's no way they're going to deliver a huge payload. So that net would stop it. It'd blow up, and the armor should do the rest.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
and especially since they don't need to have like, from what I can see, they're just running like almost like a. It looks like 2 cables basically. That just all they have to do is connect. And that's what's setting that explosion off. Which I don't think that's how all of them are doing it, but a lot of the videos I've seen of their FPVs, it looks like they just have basically like 2 cables on the front end of their drone. So whatever that, whenever those touch, that's what's I assume somehow setting that thing off.
Yeah, it just completes the circuit. And there it is. Crazy. Well, yeah. So kind of a side tangent there, but yeah, getting back to signals, the Russians and probably the Ukrainians too, but definitely the Russians are using some kind of signal jamming. It doesn't seem to be very effective though, because like I said, they lose signal, 35, maybe 25 yards out from the target, but they're still making contact with it.
Those FPV drones have too much velocity at that point.
Just too much inertia, dude. They're still heading that direction, dude.
Yeah.
So, ID is big. Now, one thing they pointed out too, which sounds like it's relatively new, is that they're using shotguns to counter drones. Good old birdshot shotguns. Yeah. So something we'd like to play with. I would assume they're shooting down the spotting drones, the quadcopter drones. Yeah. After seeing how a lot of those FPV drones move, I don't know if you'd be able to shoot one down. I think you could get lucky a couple times, but those things. Just please look them up because they are ripping. I mean, they're moving. It would be hard to shoot one down. I'm sure they can, but
all those guys training for clay pigeon for all these years it's all paid off, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Bring back skeet shooting.
Get your yellow tinted glasses on, man.
Yeah, dude.
We've got a job to do.
Oh, man. Install those chokes back in your shotgun. Oh, dude.
We need some distance.
Yeah. Keep that group tight. Dude, that's crazy stuff. But yeah, I guess they're using, again, not everybody's carrying one. Sounded like they issue a shotgun to the section, and they've got birdshot and they're for drones. And again, I assume it's they didn't specifically say, but I just from the research I've done and from the videos I've seen and stuff, I would assume they're shooting down those more stabilized position drones that are spotting,
Yeah.
And they talked a lot too about, again, going back to drone ID, there's not an effective way to know whose drone is whose really. They'll try to figure it out if there's a drone up and they don't think they've been spotted.
I don't think they're giving it much time though.
I don't think so either.
Like, I can't imagine they're like, whose drone is that? And they're just like, it's like, we can't shoot it down.
Yeah,
we gotta
stand by.
Yeah, dude.
Like, no, we're not standing by.
Yeah. Your one dude with his yellow tinted glasses is just itching, dude. He's just up there looking at it like, oh, I can hit it. Give me the green light. Pull.
I told y'all it was important for me to be working on that. No, dude. Yeah, I mean it's no secret at this point that drones have drastically influenced the battlefield. I mean, everything's being changed about it. Like the way that trenches are built over there. We'll get into trenches in a little bit. They're being constructed with drones in mind. Like you said just a second ago, they put nets over all the openings to keep drones from being able to fly down into them. That's, dude. I mean, they have full patrol procedures for reacting to drones, just like reacting to, just like you'd react to ambush or react to indirect fire. They have a react to drones, which is crazy. It's a big deal. It's a big part of what's going on over there. So, that's pretty much all we're going to say on drones, but you gotta start researching them if you haven't already. Now, we plan on having some experts on in the future to talk about drones. To be quite honest, like, I've been researching them a lot recently, but I am by no means somebody that can go off on drones forever. I don't know hardly anything about them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not gonna get too into the weeds on drones because we just don't know.
I've seen them fly around.
Yeah.
I've seen people flying around. I've watched them fly them, and I'm like, that's cool.
That's cool, dude.
But dude, I know for a fact right now, an FPV drone would take me down, dude. I would throw up, dude, 100% if I had to.
Oh, like if you had to fly one.
Oh yeah,
oh
dude.
yeah.
It's not for me.
Motion sickness for days.
Yo, dude, I've never done it, so I don't know, but I can only imagine, dude.
Have you ever tried VR?
No, I don't want to.
You haven't tried it?
No, it scares the heck out of me.
I think it would make you sick.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I get nauseous pretty easily. Like I gotta drive pretty much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna be hating life.
Because I don't get motion sick, but the first time I tried VR, I got a little bit nauseous.
Oh, dude, then I'm done.
But then I got used to it. My body kind of got used to it. But
yeah, which is worse, dude.
Why?
It was like that time. I don't know. Like it's worse when you like it's like riding on a boat, dude, and you like get off a boat and you're like you got like you're like, oh man, I can't imagine what it'd be like.
Get the old sea
legs. Like running on like a treadmill too. Like that is the weirdest feeling ever.
I do know what you mean there. I don't like that when you get off. And
dude, I will never get on a treadmill again for that reason alone. I'll run. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh man. So the next thing that we want to get into, that they didn't talk about it a ton in the video, but it's important, and that's mines. And I want to break down some stuff here. Mines are gonna, I mean, for basically forever. I mean, not forever, but dude, for a long time, mines have been a part of warfare, and they will continue to be a part of warfare for the foreseeable future. I mean, mines are going to be around forever, probably in some shape or form. Dude, the Russians love mines.
They do.
I was not surprised to hear them talk about mines and how the Russians use them. Dude, we dealt with them in Afghanistan, Russian mines, because the Russians were there. If you don't know much about world history, basically the Russians were there in the 80s, and they fought the Afghans for a long time. Dude, they would just carpet mine whole swaths of
land,
Afghanistan.
Yeah,
like they literally dropped them out of planes and they land on the ground and deploy, and then when you step on them, they blow up. So they're like, when I got there, when I deployed, it was like in the middle of the conflict. So we'd already been over in Afghanistan for like 10 years, and Bagram Airfield has minefields all around it that were just old Russian mines, and they are continuously still, like at that point, they were still continuously clearing minefields. And there's so many out there that they used it as training for, like, when you first got there, you got to go out and do like mine sweeping training.
Yeah.
And then same thing with the like combat engineers. They would go out and, clear routes and just clear mines out there.
And was that mostly just like using vehicles with like minesweepers, or was that like you like physically like ground pounding like on the
all
ground?
The above? Yeah. Like, I mean, the U.S. military uses like mine detector kind of stuff. Like they have electronic means to do it,
like a metal detector or something.
Yeah, basically. And I don't know much about it. I've never dealt with it, but I've seen it. But yeah, there's mines everywhere. And I can only imagine what it's like in Ukraine. I mean, they talked about it a lot. They reference, the different ways they're being used. It sounds like a lot of them are more rudimentary, like basically improvised explosive device. They're doing like trip mines. And I found it interesting too that they've set them up to be extremely sensitive using like needles and stuff like that instead of a grenade pen. Yeah. So that way if you're using a sweeping technique, which they go over in the video, just a very basic kind of standard sweeping technique, nothing new. It's traditional. They use the cross, in the video, they show the cross method. There's also a square you can do where you like then go diagonal up the square. There's a few different ways you can do it. If you're trying to envision what I just said, then just go watch the video. It's hard to explain on a podcast, but basically using a stick out in front of you, like a light stick, you're probing for tripwire and trying to catch it because you can't always see it. And you can use light and stuff like that to reflect off of the tripwire, but you don't want to be using light because if you're out there trying to reflect wire using some kind of white light, then you're probably going to get mortared. So don't do that. But yeah, basically because they're finding the tripwires in trenches and in forest and buildings and stuff like that, they started resorting to a extremely sensitive pin that holds that spoon on, because it sounded like they're just wiring up claymores and grenades. So they're just relatively rudimentary, but as soon as that pin gets pulled, that spoon's going to deploy, which fires the fuse, and then 2 to 5 seconds that thing's going off. So so pretty nasty stuff. They're also using fish hooks too. That was the other thing, just to catch on people. Catch on their clothes and gear. Which again, like, dude, there are some small little tiny fish hooks out there that I don't think you'd be able to see very well. And all it's going to do is catch some fabric, and that's it. Like, you won't know, you won't feel it, and then all of a sudden you've been fragged.
And even if you do feel it, it's too late at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a couple seconds to get out, but
which that's crazy. I mean, that's tough right there. So nasty stuff. Then they reference mines that they called toe poppers, which are just little tiny, basically a nuisance device. So it can absolutely be lethal, but it's more to just inflict casualties. Like just kind of down and dirty, just cause some injuries, and which changes everything. You have to completely change your plan at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if you get someone that steps on one of those and blasts some foot matter off, then obviously,
Yeah, you're not just
for one, that guy needs a pedicure, and the other, like, he needs some help as well. Like, you're not going to continue mission, especially because it sounds like they're doing a lot of stuff in pretty small man elements. So it's like you're moving in a 6-person squad, and one of your guys steps on a little toe popper, dude. Go ahead and evacuate whatever mission you're doing, because you've just lost that much more resource with that. And going back to like individual gear, it's like, okay, well, that guy had gear on him, so I mean, you could, I don't know. Yeah, there's just not really an easy method to deal with that. So
yeah, and then you've got your anti material mines that are going to be more for vehicles, and usually those are easier to find because they're bigger, they're a big disc. And just some quick tips on looking for something that, like a booby trap that's in the ground. Look for discolored soil. That's a really big one, because that means that there's been recently disturbed earth. Also, if you see any straight or serpentine shapes in the ground, which our brains are pretty good at spotting. It's kind of a instinctual thing for spotting snakes and stuff like that. But if you see that could be a tripwire, or it could be a command det. Even getting more rudimentary, like I've got a lot of experience looking for IEDs overseas, and they would do nasty stuff where literally it would just be this. An IED stands for an improvised explosive device, for those that don't know, and they work very similar to mines. But usually they're controlled by a spotter, so they're you would call that command det. So you initiate some kind of a command, and then it detonates. And we used a lot of signal jamming, so the cell phone detonated stuff that they would use early in the war was not effective. We countered that very quickly. I think maybe the first couple of years, they would still try to use it, and it just wasn't effective because, again, our American signal jamming is extremely good. We're probably the best at it. It's very, very potent. It's very widespread, and it causes cancer in people. So, anyways, so what they would do is actually something brilliant. I remember we saw this multiple times, and I was like, man, that is so smart. And what it was a clothespin, like a wood,
like a clothespin.
Yep,
that's what
like what you would hang on a wire to dry your clothes.
No one does that anymore.
No one does, but they do it in Afghanistan. And third world, dude. And literally what it was that they would have that thing mounted to the IED. And then it would have two metal connections with wires running in. And as soon as that clothespin closed, and made connection, completed the circuit. So all they would do is stick a piece of paper or like a thin piece of wood in between it, and that would be connected to a cord.
Yeah.
And it would be a thin little line, and they'd run that line off like 1,000 yards, super far, or not yards, probably feet, 1,000 feet, but real, long ways off, several hundred yards away.
Yeah.
And they'd literally sit there and watch you, and they'd just pull it. They'd just give that a pull, and yeah, it's a long distance, but it's such a light effect. I mean, it's nothing. There's no power on it. And as soon as that got pulled out of the mouth of that clothespin, and those metal connections completed that circuit and made that connection, it'd blow up.
Yeah, and you could do the same with the tripwire. You could just run that across, and all that does is hang up on someone's feet or
Well, they would literally pull it. They would. I mean, I see what you're saying. Sorry. Yeah, you're saying you could fashion it to be a tripwire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, you could absolutely do that. So really, really crafty and really, really nasty and easy to do. Doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to really figure that out. But most of the time we would find those things by just observing the soil and being very situationally aware and not just walking on stuff.
You're not going to be able to put the soil back the way that you found it. It's just going to be impossible. Anyone who's gone in and dug a hole, especially when you're talking like on clay or something like that, like I remember down in North Carolina, you could see it really well because you had like that like reddish sand.
Yep.
And then when you would dig out, you'd get like more of that like earthy dirt that would come up on top, and then when you tried to like rebury anything, it would just, you could see like that browns or something like along with all that like kind of reddish sand.
Yeah. And you can see that in multiple soil types.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to it and go play with it. That's something I'd recommend going out if you've never seen it, or if you've never, it probably makes sense now that we're talking about it. If you never really thought about it, go out and disturb some earth, and clean it up and kind of back up and take a view and observe what that looks like. Even after it rains, you would think that it would wash everything out and make it harder. Well, no, because disturbed earth is more porous. It's been more recently disturbed, so it's going to absorb water differently than the earth around it. So it actually sticks out like a sore thumb after it rains, unless it's like dumping. I mean, Afghanistan would get like, it didn't rain much there, but then when it did, it was just like, we're going to flood, and you just get these crazy rain monsoon style kind of things.
Yeah.
And so that would actually help us a lot, because it would usually just, all the IDs would just be in the open. They would just wash the dirt off of them, and then you would just have IDs. Or if you got like a really heavy rain season, it would just set off IDs, which was pretty funny too. You'd just randomly, one would just like go off, way off somewhere. We're just like sick. We don't have to call a UD on that one,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like lots of booby trapping is going on in Ukraine.
They talked about formations and stuff too, like how to prevent, obviously moving in a file.
Yep.
Is going to prevent you from having, or you're just going to have less chances of stepping on mines and things like that. So
yeah, huge. And literally, like there'd be places even in Afghanistan where we were worried about it, and we'd literally walk in each other's footsteps.
Yeah.
You didn't risk walking off the path. Same with driving. We would drive and as a vehicle operator, you would operate that vehicle in the tire path of the vehicle in front of you, and you wouldn't drive off of it. So little things like that. Anything else on mines?
No, not really. I mean, just it's kind of interesting how they disperse those toe poppers, but like it's just the munitions that they shoot off over top of like a
and they
grid
just scatter
square, and it just scatters them all over the place.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing a lot of like little nasty booby trapping stuff too, like where they stick them. They mentioned sticking them in cigarette boxes and stuff like that, which gives you an idea of how small they are. Very, very small, just gnarly little devices. The other thing too, on those bigger mines, usually they can't be set off by like a person's weight, because they don't want those things to be wasted on a person. Will it kill a person? Yeah, but they want that to they want that to be triggered by a tank or a large vehicle. So very dangerous, but not quite as sensitive as some of the smaller ones that are more anti-personnel.
Obviously, don't just go step on a mine, though.
Yeah, let's test that. Okay, so the other thing they talked about a lot, and this is something that that is like, it's just something that scares me to death, dude. It's, to this day, is artillery.
Yeah,
and thankfully, I've never been on the receiving side of like good, accurate artillery or mortars, but I've been mortared a lot.
Yeah.
And it's pretty wild how effective it can be. And you can tell when someone knows what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
Usually I'd see that from our side, which
That's
was
what
nice. But very, very deadly.
America's pretty effective.
Yeah, extremely, extremely effective actually. And our munitions are very, very potent. But again, just like mines, artillery, dude, ever since cannons were invented, like old ship cannons, you know, artillery will continue to be a part of
old
the battlefield.
Wooden ships, dude.
Yeah.
Just blasting each other into little bits.
Yep. All the way up to the old era of the battleship where they just mounted giant cannons on them and just launched pieces of steel at each other and just onto land, you know?
Yeah.
Which actually, there's been a lot of times that there's a few battleships that still exist in the U.S. Navy fleet. This is kind of a side topic, but it's cool. I think it's the, I think it's the USS Iowa, maybe. I don't know. I don't think it is the Iowa. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. Someone will know. Actually, if there's any Navy guys out there, you probably know. But I believe to this day, there's still at least one battleship that is like, it's modernized. It's an old World War II era battleship, you know. But they've reconsidered them because for fire missions, literally doing like, you know, they get them close to where the conflict is and launch artillery because they just have huge guns on them.
Huh.
And it's a safe position. They can be effectively, you know,
depending on your enemy,
loaded and operated.
You're not even scared of anything either.
And they're cheap because the Arleigh Burke class destroyers and stuff out there that are launching missiles, you know, it's expensive. It's expensive every single mission they run with one of those. But those big old cannons, dude, they're just pretty cheap to operate. Yeah. So I guess it's pretty cost effective and they're pretty effective still. So, I don't know all the details on it, but I know that that's at least been done recently. I don't know if it's still being done to this exact day, but very recently they had recommissioned some battleships to just be like fire support, which is kind of sick. Could you imagine just like a huge, just old World War II U.S. battleship just entering the Mediterranean?
Yeah.
Just like, oh, crap. Probably with a USS Virginia submarine escort. Crazy.
It is crazy.
So, artillery, again, big part of the battlefield now. Any kind of modern conflict where you're dealing with any kind of modern fighting force, they're gonna be using artillery. Artillery is broken down really into three kind of main categories. There's a fourth that's relatively unique, which I'll talk about in a second. But you've got your cannons, or like your field artillery, which is your traditional. They're referred to as guns now.
Yeah.
It's a heavy, long-barreled platform, and they're designed to do long-range fire missions. Depending on the force that's operating them, they can be extremely accurate. And we're talking long range, like dozens and dozens and dozens of kilometers, you know, just like going huge distances. The other one is howitzers, which are smaller, shorter systems. And there's some hybrids now. Like I know the U.S. military uses like gun howitzers, which are more, they're basically like, they're just bigger howitzers.
Yeah.
But generally, though, howitzers were a shorter system, lighter, a little bit more mobile. Still firing very heavy cartridges or very heavy munitions, but at shorter range threats, a little bit more little bit more universal, kind of like your multi-tool of the artillery world, if you will. And then your third kind of last category is mortars. So again, extremely flexible, shorter range, that they lob. They don't do like a more targeted approach. Technically, they're all lobbing. Even like the long or the field artillery, is still technically like lobbing at the target, but it's a more shallow arc. It's a lot more direct.
Yeah.
Forward and direct weapon. Mortars are definitely like a large, steep arc that's going up over.
But accurate, man.
Extremely accurate by somebody who knows what they're doing. Yeah. And very mobile. Very mobile and fast.
Like guys jumping out of airplanes with a whole mortar system.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, was it the 60 millimeter tube?
Yeah.
Yeah, we always went out with a Charlie that had literally carried a mortar tube and mortars in his ruck, like,
yeah,
and we could set him up and get him lobbing, dude.
Yeah, I think one carries the tube and one carries the whatever the plate or whatever the heck they call that thing.
Oh, okay.
That's how we did it.
Yeah,
I think we had 2 per platoon that would come out with it, 2 or 3.
Okay. Yeah, overseas we just brought one guy out with us, and I think he just kind of had all the stuff with him.
Yeah.
But we never deploy, or I don't remember ever like rapidly, like we would deploy them and set them up, but I don't remember ever like reacting to contact with it. That would have been cool. I don't think we ever were in a situation like that.
Like where you guys got it set up and started just dropping mortars.
Yeah, as as a counter, because that was part of our SOP. We could counter like other mortars and stuff.
Did you guys ever use the mortars while you were there?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so our mortar position on the COP fired missions like crazy. Yeah. But it was a bigger, it was a more permanent mortar setup.
Yeah.
It was like a lot bigger tube.
I can't remember. 120s or something.
Yeah, I think so. But then they were quick. Those guys were fast. They could start hanging rounds in, less than a minute.
Yeah.
Like we'd get contact and they'd be, all the guns would be rolling, and then you just start hearing that thing go off. Like, dang, dude. And then we set up the tow missile, and that was like the last that we really got our base got shot at. So
yeah,
because that thing was literally like, oh, it was a targeted thing.
Yeah. FPV drone before they were cool.
Yeah, those aren't actually FPV though.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying.
I wish they were. That'd be kind of cool. But you just hold the crosshair on the target, and you can just see the missile going. Yeah, those are wire guided.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
They actually have little wires on each side that spool out as the missile flies. So you have direct connection. It's not radio connected. A lot of people think they're like signal guided.
Yeah.
No, it's command wire that spools out on the missile as the missile flies. But
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's random. I went to tow school. I was I was heavy weapons in my unit, so we operated the anti-tank systems and stuff, which was the tow missile, and I went to the Raytheon tow school and got to shoot at tanks, like actual tanks and stuff, and it was sick with live missiles. It was fun.
Dude, we're bringing up all the hot topics, dude. Raytheon and Ukraine, dude.
Raytheon, dude. They make a cool missile. They do have a variant that is radio signal operated, but the command wire is cool, dude. Because even if you're running signal jammers, it doesn't stop it. It does limit the range, though. The range is limited, obviously, because they can only spool out so far. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So the fourth category that I don't know if it's being used in Ukraine, but it was used where I was at in Afghanistan a lot. And they're relatively easy to operate and very rudimentary, and that's recoilless rifles. Or recoilless rockets. And they are nasty. They're very hard to detect. They're fast. They are fired line of sight. So if you have an elevated position, you can load up. Basically, it's a tube that you put a rocket in and you light it off, and you just kind of point it and let it just go down there and do whatever it's going to do. Pretty scary stuff. They used them a lot in Afghanistan. And the main reason they used them was because a lot of the FOBs and not the COPs really. And for those acronyms, you got COP, which is a combat outpost, and FOB, a forward operating base, and then you had air bases. A lot of the FOBs and air bases had anti-ordnance weaponry, like the CRAM. The CRAM is basically it looks like a giant R2D2. The Navy uses a similar variant. It's basically the same gun, but they call it the Phalanx, if you're more familiar with Navy stuff. But it's just a gun that just rips bullets out, and they all blow up. They all go up to a certain spot, and they start going and blowing up in the air, and they'll just shoot mortars down. So, like, if you try to mortar an American base, then air raid sirens happen, and then you'll just hear those CRAMs go, and then and then you just stop it. But the rockets, though, were too fast and too low of an arc to be detected. So, if in areas that had a lot of surrounding mountains where they could actually get up and make an accurate shot, that was the main problem they ran into, is their range. Their range wasn't as good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they defeated the air defenses, So, I don't know if it doesn't sound like logistically they have much of that over there. So I'm assuming they're still just dealing with traditional artillery and mortars and stuff. But that is another category that's extremely prevalent in modern warfare, is the rockets. So that's a whole other thing. And they actually mentioned, I think they call it the grad rockets.
Yeah.
Which I don't know a whole lot about. It's basically a rocket pod that's mounted to a truck, and they said it targets an entire grid square.
Yeah,
which
they
like
sound like, it sounds like that's like the nightmare of nightmares over there.
Yeah,
just based off of the way those guys talked about it, it was like, yeah. I think the British guy says they're nasty buggers or something like that, or something very British.
Dude. Yeah, that's
something very beans for breakfast esque.
Yeah, dude. Oh man. So, and I don't know, they said it takes out a whole grid square. I don't know like what scale that is. But that's a big area, Yeah. That's generally a large area that those things will target. So that's scary stuff.
Yeah, just go ahead and just get ready for one, casualties, and for two, just lots of just chaos on the ground.
Yeah. And speaking of ground, the earth that you're walking on directly influences the effectiveness of incoming munitions. So as another example from Afghanistan, all the COPs, all the combat outposts and FOBs and everything, if you've been over there, you'll know what I'm talking about, but they're all lined with a thick layer of gravel. There's gravel everywhere. I was so sick and tired of walking on gravel. But the reason they did that was to absorb impacts. So for incoming mortars will go into that gravel. It's softer, and it's also
Is it like gravel? Is it like just to paint a picture? I'm just like envisioning like the gravel in like a playground, like where it's like loose gravel.
Exactly like
where
that.
You're just like
exactly. That's the best. I was curious what you're going to say. It's that like high quality gravel that's just kind of loose.
Not D1 though, right? Because D1 would be like kind of, or not D1, but crushed rock. Like crushed rock would like kind of like grab. I feel like it wouldn't be as like loose.
It's not like the really small fine like that you sink into.
Yeah,
super bad. It's a little bit more rigid.
It's not as like calf workouty.
Yeah, but you're constantly like your articulator muscles in your lower legs are constantly working.
Yeah, so like a playground then.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, playground's a really good description. But yeah, the reason is because
actually they don't even make playgrounds in that gravel anymore. I think that's like a 90s kid thing.
They use that mulch stuff now.
Trash.
Yeah. Or that rubber, dude. Have you seen that rubber?
Yeah, it's like ground up tire or something like that.
Yeah.
Which would probably also work. Well, maybe not.
I don't know. I never saw that. I think either way, what it did was we took a few times, we took a mortar right in the middle of our HLZ, right in the middle of the helicopter landing zone. You have a big spot the helicopters can come land, and they just didn't even really crater. They just went in there. They threw a bunch of rocks around, but basically they on impact they go deep into the gravel because it's loose and there's a pretty thick layer of it.
Yeah,
and they explode, and it contains all the shrapnel inside of it, and then you've got just rocks flying around. But they don't. I mean, the rocks aren't that big of a deal. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they could hurt you, but
yeah, you get pelted by a bunch of rocks.
You just get hit by them, and you're just like, whoa, oh yeah, dude, because you're just dumb.
Just got mortared.
Yeah. You just got a CIB, brother. No. Oh man. But yeah, so that's a tactic that is actively used by the U.S. military, and in the video they reference a few times of like, oh man, we don't know how we lived through it. Mortars were landing like 20 feet from us and stuff like that. And I told Steven, I said, I bet they got lucky and it was just good. They were on good ground for it. Cause if you're not using a munition that air bursts, which again, they reference the difference between Western munitions and Russian munitions. I don't know a lot about Russian munitions. Like their artillery and stuff like that. I know quite a bit about their mines just cause the stuff we had to deal with, but their artillery, I'm not sure, but I know Western artillery, if you're targeting people, they can set them up to airburst. So certain rounds, some fister's going to message us and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I don't know what the specific round's called, but basically it senses when it gets close enough to the ground and it blows up in the air. And so it never touches the ground, and it'll send just a wave of shrapnel, a few feet above the ground, which is nasty. And that would be very effective. I don't know if they're doing that or not. They might be. I'm sure they have that capability, because that capability's been around forever. I know a lot of their stuff is like 80s, 90s era, it sounds like, but I'm sure they're using a lot of that.
They're actually just trying to get rid of all their Soviet dude, the amount of times I hear that. Yeah, they're just trying to get rid of all their Soviet stuff. That's the only reason they're getting kind of beat up over there.
Yeah.
It's like, why would they do that?
Yeah, dude.
They're just getting a bunch of Russian people killed for no reason just so they can get rid of some Soviet crap.
Yeah, that's
like, send it to Africa then if you want to get rid of it.
Yeah. Weird, dude. Weird. So yeah, I mean there's a lot to know about different munitions, and actually on that I would say it's important to research, just not in great detail, but I think it's very important as a modern Minuteman to understand modern weaponry and munitions. A lot of people are like, well, you can't, you're not in the military, so you don't need to worry about, the specifications of grenades and stuff. I disagree. I think it's very important to know the kill radius on different munitions. I think it's very important to know the effective range on advanced munitions. I think it's important to understand how different kinds of like ship deployed systems work. You don't need to be like an expert on it, but understand ranges and
grasp. Yeah,
the effective.
Yeah, it better
deployment.
It better allows you to counter it too. Like, maybe you're not going to ever use it, but understanding that will better influence how you create formations or whatever. Like,
yeah, spacing. If you're fighting a lot of artillery, then you got to have some big spacing. You're using some big spacing. If you're all clustered together, you get a good hot shot spotter and a artillery team working together, and dude, you're done. That's it. They're gonna get you. They're gonna start to bracket you and identify how you're evading, and they're gonna get you. So, yeah, understand it. Just do some homework. This stuff, that's what's really cool about the internet now. I mean, this stuff is available to research and figure out. There's probably some nerd out there on YouTube that's got a full video on how a Russian, whatever cannon works, and it was developed in 1976, and it's got a, here's the minute. Like, dude, that stuff, I can go down the rabbit hole on that stuff. I know so much about Russian submarines for no reason. That's useless. That actually is useless, but well, maybe not. But dude, I'm just saying, like, that stuff's out there. It's it's out there. Steven's laughing because he knows, dude. We can talk about Akula class submarines for a while, and you'll just be like, why? I'll be like, I don't know. But the Seawolf gets him and hunts him down and kills him, though. So America wins in that war. But dude, this stuff is not useless knowledge. Understand the weaponry that's being used out there in these different spaces. Like, just randomly, I was like, dude, I keep hearing about the Iron Dome. I've always known about it. You know, talking more about the Israel conflict.
Yeah.
I don't know how that thing actually works. I watched a whole video on it. Dude, it's insane what an engineering marvel that thing is and how effective and accurate it is. It's extremely expensive. So again, good thing Americans are paying taxes, because I'm pretty sure we're the main funder behind all that. But just ridiculous, dude. Our money goes to the weirdest stuff. But still, there's whole YouTube videos out there of guys that break things down to extreme detail, and I think it's worth it, especially when you start talking about some of these more small arms or indirect fire weapons. Having a working understanding of, like, averages, like how what does a 155 do? What's its effective kill radius on impact? What kind of munitions can be operated out of that? Do they airburst? Are they bunker busters? So, what are they? I can tell you right now, it's this combination. It's ammo specific. They can do it all. So, yeah, important to research. But anything else on indirect?
Did we want to talk about how you react to it, just because they didn't really cover it?
Yeah.
All right. So basically, they talk about, like, understanding the different sounds of mortar rounds, and, like, some of that's just going to come from, being there and doing the thing. Like, I can tell, like, they basically talked about, like, I can tell, like, if it's right on my position, or if it's, going to be 200 meters away.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy that they talk about, like, yeah, if it's like 200 meters away, we're not going to really worry about it. I mean, we're going to keep an eye on it, but that could be a completely different, like, element that they're trying to do a fire mission on. So it's like, yeah, I'm not going to really, which 200 meters away isn't that far away. Kind of crazy. Like,
no.
When he was talking about that, I was just like, I feel like I would be like, is that user error? like, you know what I mean? Like, did someone mess up? Were they shooting at us? I might actually start reacting to contact or reacting to indirect fire in that situation. But anyways, for U.S. military, pretty across the board, it's if someone were to call incoming, like if they hear the whistle, everyone goes into a prone position. You got a leadership position that basically indicates a rally point that you go to, and everyone picks up once the fire mission is complete. Obviously, you don't do it while it's still rounds are still dropping around you, but you pick up and move to that location. This could continue until you finally don't have explosives dropping on your head, basically. So this is like a continuation until you're to a safe location, basically. So pretty basic, but something that should be trained, I feel like.
Lots
heavily.
of running.
Yeah.
Lots of run in, which it goes back to that fitness topic too. You got to be able to run and get after it and carry all your gear and move quick. But yeah, I mean, it's something we drill all the time when we were in the military.
Yeah. And it's a pretty easy thing to even train as a Minuteman, if you had like some way to display a loud whistling noise, whether that's over like a speaker, or if you have like training flashbangs or something like that, something that you can, because those things make like an audible, so you could just, okay, yeah, that's our whistle, incoming. Everyone gets down, boom, okay, position, call out position, distance, direction. We're gonna move to it now, and you're picking up, you're rolling, and whoever's like in a cadre type position, can just keep dropping it as long as they, okay, yeah, let's keep pushing these guys. And obviously you keep running through that and then switch roles and have someone else run it, so that way everyone gets a turn at doing it. You don't just have like one guy that's being the, that turd of a platoon sergeant that never did PT,
Yeah. Yeah. They don't get into that too much in the video, which I understand. I mean, that's a lot to cover, and think he says it at some point. He's like, yeah, the point of this video is just to share knowledge. It's not to make people experts.
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing we're doing, where, you know, you're going to have to go out and do your own homework and put this stuff to practice. Until you actually put a lot of this to practice, you can have the information in your head. We talk about this all the time, but it does you no good until you actually start putting it to physical practice. So,
I think training for indirect fire is incredibly important, though, because pretty much any military can, like, you look at it, like Afghanis and Iraqis, dude, like,
yeah, they were doing
they're farmers and just weird. I don't know. Like, they're Tuscan Raiders, dude. Like,
yeah.
like straight up, and they have mortars. So,
yeah, dude, they are. Dude, the Sandmen, dude. Dude, yeah, no, it's extremely important. So, yeah, and you can look that stuff up. It's pretty available out there, but definitely something you and your group should be working on and be able to do. And then they don't break this down specifically ever in the video, but I want to talk about it a little bit, and that's patrolling. They reference it a few times, and I'm not going to spend too much time here because we have full podcast episodes on patrolling basics. So in any time we talk about like reconnaissance or anything like that, it comes up, but it's such a key part of just fundamental infantrymen or soldiering skills is having good patrolling disciplines. So
yeah,
got to work on it. Got to have it. Should be it's foundational. It's like you should build upon it. You can't really do anything else if you don't understand how to do a good patrol, because that's how you move around.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the firearms industry, unfortunately, focus on X. You know, like once we get on site, you know, like the CQB. You know, and I'm not saying that that's bad to learn. Don't misunderstand me. But so much of it's like, you know, all right, engaging and clear a building, and like, you know, pull reconnaissance from this position. And a lot of people miss
the lead up,
all the planning and all the route preparation, all the early preparing of your gear.
Yeah, and that's going to make and break your mission, you know? Like,
yeah. All the logistics.
That's the foundation. And if you don't have a solid foundation, then your house is going to crumble. So,
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are at conducting Battle Drill 6 if you don't know how to get to the building to begin with.
Yeah.
And get to the building without being compromised prior to getting in the building. Because, okay, yeah, you've gotten a building, but guess what? Now you're in your tomb because they're about to drop a whole bunch of crap on your head and just drop that building on top of you.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are at the, you know, the cool guy stuff if you don't know how to do the stuff that can put you in that position to do the cool guy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
kind of piggybacking off of the things they specifically mentioned that were related to patrolling, one thing they brought up often was proper spacing. We kind of already talked about this. Again, why it's important to understand what kind of threats you're dealing with. But you need to have enough spacing from one another that if a grenade or a mortar lands in the middle of your element, that, you know, you don't all just die.
Yeah.
Needs to be well spaced. Usually that 10 to 15 meters is pretty standard. That can vary. That's not a hard rule, so don't just adhere to that. It's very dependent on your terrain. It's dependent on the speed of your movement. It's dependent on what kind of threats you're up against. If you are constantly being hit by artillery, I'd have more spacing than that.
Yeah.
Your formations, they talked about, they pretty much always run single file. And that's because of the mine threat. They're dealing with a lot of mines. Makes sense. And if that's something that they're constantly fighting against, you know, and dealing with. So they're sticking to known routes or cleared routes, or they're, you know, have someone clearing in front of them, and then they're following closely behind that person. Their head is on a swivel, which this is applicable across the board. If anyone that's been in the military, you've heard keep your head on a swivel more than you've heard, all right, it's time to go to sleep. You've heard it so many times.
Yeah.
And it is literally exactly what it sounds like. It's look around all the time. You're never zoning off. And dude, it sounds simple, but again, this is why we harp so much on going out and actually doing the thing, going out and rucking and practice it. Practice looking around and really taking in your environment.
Yeah, doing the thing with intention, because that's like, he even said that, the American guy said that at the very end, talking about, we have these trained regiments for our physical fitness, and also it should be the same for our training for, Minutemen type stuff.
Yeah.
Have a plan, have goals. You gotta be intentional. I thought it was super cool when they talked about it's super basic, and guys like with our background, we don't even think about it anymore because it's so ingrained in our system. But talking about where's the nearest cover from here, talking about like in a land nav course, how many times do cadre come up and be like, where's the nearest cover? I mean, it happens all the time. Like, and for guys like us, we forget about that because it's just so, it's like indoctrinated into our, just the way we think. But for someone who doesn't come from that background, that's something that you're going to have to be intentional to work on. Like, okay, if I were to get in a firefight right now, is there a good, cover and concealment anywhere near me? Or where's the closest one that I could get to? I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. They talked a bunch about having to constantly look for overhead threats.
Yeah.
That's something that,
isn't kind of new.
Yeah.
New, like I wasn't worried about that when I was in.
Yeah, really. You're looking for, or you're trying to look for aerial assets, like if you hear a helicopter or like a jet or something like that. But this is very different from that. It's like they're trying to physically, again, because you're probably not going to hear them. You're not going to hear those spotting drones if they're way up high. So they're having to try to find them.
But a lot of things still apply, that's why we talk about, moving through heavily treed areas with large canopies and things like that. The same disciplines that you use would work against drones,
Yeah.
When you build hide sites, putting, camo net over the top of them. Yeah, it's going to camouflage your position, but it's also going to be a preventative for something to come into your location and blow up your entire little group that you have. So it's like some of that stuff unintentionally works still, weirdly enough. So
yeah.
Anyways, I didn't mean to derail you there.
No, that's good. That's spot on. So yeah, head on a swivel, looking for identifiable threats that are in your environment. So for them, drones and mines are huge. Like Stephen already talked about it, but looking for cover, I can't harp on that enough. That should become an automatic thing. You should always be able to identify cover and concealment, and the difference between the two. Really quick, just in case you don't know, concealment is something that hides you and your signature, your outline from a potential threat, but might not offer actual cover. Cover is going to offer protection from a threat. So usually referring to like ballistic protection. So it's going to keep like some kind of hard structure, maybe like a concrete wall or, a deep hole in the ground, something like that.
Yeah.
Cover and concealment gives you both. So you're hidden, you're concealed, but you're also, in case they do find you, you're protected from ballistic threat. So understanding that and knowing how to look for the two and knowing the difference between the two. A lot of people assume things are cover that aren't. There's a lot of material out there that is not cover.
Yeah.
A good, easy example is interior walls in buildings.
Yeah.
Even exterior walls on many buildings, not cover.
Not all trees are cover either. A lot of people think, oh yeah, that tree's going to be covered. It's like, dude, bullets can go through some decently large trees. I mean, like if you're talking big trees, obviously that's cover, but
yeah.
If you're talking about, smaller trees, like heck no, dude.
Yeah.
Like that ain't covering you unless you got like multiple trees in front of you, like to that position. You know what I mean?
But, yeah. No, it's amazing how violent some of these munitions are too. Like, you start getting into the bigger calibers, and dude, those things are moving and ripping through stuff.
Yep.
Another good patrolling basic that's that just can't be talked about enough is your route planning. You got to be able to plan a route wisely, knowing your area really well. This goes back to that understanding your your own area of operation extremely well. Planning your route so you're not going to get detected. You're not going to get found out. But for them, they were planning their routes around hard covers. So being able to always have some kind of hard cover close by that they could retreat to and get into if they needed to. Because again, a huge threat they're dealing with is artillery. So yeah, you got to have hard cover so you can evade indirect fire. Yeah. And then that kind of leads directly into hardcover. I want to talk about that really quick. Just to kind of understand that. What is hardcover? A lot of people kind of ask about that. Well, hardcover is directly referring to ballistic protection from indirect fire. So could also be from like FPV drones. But because those deliver a smaller payload, it's usually not a big munition. It's a little bit easier to find cover from that, from what I've gathered. But hardcover is like, no, they said, I found it interesting that they mentioned, it's the buildings aren't very strong. The buildings will get leveled, but they're going into the basement level. They're going under the ground. So they're physically under the ground, and then they're safe down there. And they said something about Ukrainian buildings not being very strong, but I would actually go ahead and say, don't limit that to Ukraine. I don't think very many buildings are strong to
withstand.
Yeah, to withstand like bombardment. Because again, these are munitions that are built to defeat buildings easily. A lot of these munitions that can be fired out of artillery are built to defeat bunkered positions. So hard cover, especially American munitions. A lot of them are multi-stage, so they'll deploy on impact, which will be basically like a shape charge to kind of make room for that warhead, and then it'll have a second stage that'll explode inside once it's made entry. Wild, crazy stuff. So hardcover is not just like, it's not like Call of Duty where you can just run inside the neighboring building. No, it's probably a lot more involved than that. We're talking like deep level basements, stuff like that. So, something to think about, something to understand, especially if you're working in like urban areas. It's going to be something you got to do. Now, if you're in a rural area, then you're either having to make your own, like dig your own holes in the ground, or you're trying to just completely evade detection altogether and be really smart with your route planning.
Yeah. So,
anything else on hardcover?
No, not really.
All right. So, something that I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it, but kind of talking about digging holes, trenches, man. These dudes are having big old trench warfare over there, which is like something straight out of World War I. I was like, dude, the amount of trench warfare that's happening. But I think it's pretty unique to Eastern European conflicts. Definitely a very Russian thing. Trench warfare is, in my opinion, antiquated, and it would not be effective against a modern U.S. type military. As soon as you started building trenches, you would just be welcoming one of the worst airstrikes you've ever seen, and you would just be done. That would be it. So, very dependent on who you're fighting against. Now, it's been very clear that Russia doesn't have the logistical backing that anybody thought they did. So that's why the trench warfare is working. They're having to resort back to old-fashioned, just conquer, every 10 feet, you're just trying to gain literal feet out there, which is wild. It's like, you look back and at the history of like some of the nasty World War I trench warfare battles, and they were gaining like nothing. It'd take them weeks to gain like a few feet, which is just crazy.
It's disgusting.
They would do it forever. They would spend months in there just gaining and losing ground with each other. So yeah, it's pretty wild. But that's kind of sounds like what they're doing a little bit. I think it's on a bigger scale than that. But they're definitely using those trenches. So, Is it relevant to us? Maybe not, but I think it's important to understand because it could be. You never know. It could. You never know what could happen.
No, you don't.
And you don't know.
I think understanding it's important. There's a reason it's a battle drill. So,
yeah, dude.
If the U.S. military still has it as a battle drill, I feel like it's still somewhat important to understand, at least. Maybe not like to like hyper focus in on, but to at least understand what it entails.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to cover a few things they talked about, the trenches that are being used over there, they vary a lot in size. They range everywhere from small fighting positions, like ranger graves and stuff like that, all the way up to like big logistical trenches where they're actually got, they're living in them. They're staying in them for a long time. They're storing supplies in them. Kind of like, again, what you saw back in World War II. Especially the Germans, man, historically, the Germans would build these huge logistical trenches where they actually operated vehicles and they built tunnels and crazy stuff. Sounds like they didn't really talk about that too much in the video, but from what I've read and researched, Russia is doing that. Russia's got logistical trenches where they're, behind the front lines, they're operating, all kinds of supply trucks and different things like that down beneath the ground level in trenches.
Just orcs, dude.
Yeah, dude. They are kind of like orcs, aren't they? They're also constructed in a zigzag pattern, which is something I didn't really like. It's something that was just kind of, I guess, like common sense, but I didn't really think about it in depth until I saw that video. And the guy says, like, yeah, you don't want to have like this long stretch of just, basically just a huge linear danger area that you can just rain machine gun fire down and just kill everybody down.
Yeah.
So they zigzag the ditch or the trench to basically compartmentalize the potential fighting areas.
Yeah.
Because, once you get in a trench, you're moving down the trench. You're moving down the length of the trench and clearing it.
Yeah, you see a lot of those H-shaped. Like the one that they actually have in that video is like, it's not like cut in depth the same as how you see them in Ukraine, but like as far as the shape of it, it was like that H shape, looks accurate to a lot of those videos that I see of guys dropping payloads down on. It's like that weird H shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trench.
Yep. So very compartmentalized, which is important to understand for trench building, Yeah, lots of hasty trenches. The front lines, they were saying they're only about 5 feet deep. They're basically just fighting positions, hastily dug, being expanded quickly because they're not very big. So as far as like assaulting the trenches, it sounds like they're using a lot of just heavy suppressive fire, a lot of speed. It's not slow and methodical from what they were explaining. It's very like hit the trench hard and fast and just go like you're going. And they kind of showed that, and they were moving quick, through the trench, using some CQB techniques once they get into some of those intersections, trench intersections and stuff like that. But mainly sounds like they're using technicals or vehicles to suppress the trench, the opening of it, and then they just hit it and they get in there, and lots of confusion. They were saying that a lot of guys are still shooting out of the trench, like shooting where they think they're coming from, and then they just kill them because they're already in the trench.
Yeah.
And wild stuff. Very chaotic. They talked about how some trenches are booby trapped. That goes back to mines and stuff like that. And they brought up the historical example of how it would be done back in World War I, where they would intentionally lose a trench, or a trench they knew they were going to lose. They would allow it to be lost, but then booby trap it just like crazy. And so you'd come in and get smashed. And from what they said, it sounded like that wasn't happening as much. It's not happening very much. It's more like, no, they're living in these trenches and then they're coming in and kind of taking over, but that it does happen. So,
yeah.
And then again, trenches are built to counter drones. So lots of blindage positions, which are basically like frequently throughout the layout of the trench, you'll have these hardened structures, usually made out of just wood, but structures that they can hide and take cover in. And then also they've netted like pretty much the entire top of the trench to avoid easy drone strikes.
Yep.
So, and also munition dropping. It would stop that too. But yeah, pretty wild. Again, it's something to know about. Nasty work though, man. Nasty business.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting when they were talking about like when the Russians would get or overwhelmed, they would kind of like tuck themselves back into like those blindages just to like hide. But then you got 6 dudes deep in this tight little like dark hole, and you just get mortared to death. It's just a rough way to go.
Just go into your grave, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say that's kind of a side note is you start looking at the history of trench warfare, and it's amazing how many casualties are caused just by trench foot and sickness inside the trenches. Long time, prolonged periods of time just in wet, cold, just gross environments. Waste is hard to consolidate in that environment, so lots of feces and just human waste. Casualties are having to be stacked around, and dude, it's not a pretty picture. I mean, we're talking some nasty conditions. So personal hygiene and having good footwear and changing your socks frequently. This is all stuff we've talked about before, but again, it can kind of fall by the wayside when it comes to the big picture of warfare. But dude, it is one of the most important things. And I've been seeing tons of pictures, again, researching this topic heavily before we did the podcast and stuff. I was like, man, it's just there, guys. They look like they're living like pigs. They're just slopping around. They're orking around. Just orc lifestyle, dude.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I can empathize with them slightly. So,
yeah,
from a man that's lived lots of life in a hole, dude, just sheltered, dude.
You gotta take care of yourself to the best of your ability in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks being stuck in a little dirt shelter for a long period of time, dude.
Yeah.
It's hard to really take care of yourself because you're just like, what's the point?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds miserable. I'm glad I never had to do any of that. Oh, man. Dude, that reconnaissance lifestyle's wild, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
just ground gremlins, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Anything else on trenches? We kind of breezed through that, but
there's not much to it, man. I thought it was kind of interesting them talking about like taking, POWs, prisoners of war. Like that's just not really an option, especially in the trench war fighting, because it's just like you're not taking a chance of someone potentially having a grenade or whatever, and doing safety shots and things like that. Things that American soldiers have been doing a long time. I mean, even in the Geneva Convention, pretty sure you're allowed to shoot people as long as you don't cross the threshold of their body. So
yeah.
So when you're doing the react contact, like as long as you don't step over the casualties, you can pop shots into them all day long.
Yeah, and you really should. You'd be amazed at how many people are killed.
Well, you're taught to.
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying for those that weren't military, I'm just telling you, like, you should be practicing it, because if you're going to clear an objective and neutralize a threat and move across the, once you flank the position and you move across and clear out the threats, like as you're moving across, you got to be giving them a little bit more, touching them up a little bit more, because
kill off the possums, dude.
The amount of people that play dead and sit up and shoot you in the back, it happens all the time. We lost guys in Afghanistan to that, literally to that. So it's a real thing. And
the old fake and death thing is like, it's just going to be universally like something that humans will naturally do just to be deceptive. They at that point, they've kind of just accepted the fact that they're going to die. So at that point, they're just kind of trying to take some people with them. So faking dead and waiting for someone to have their guard down to kill them or maybe multiple people is a pretty easy way to go. So understanding that you got to take a little bit of humanity out of it and look out for the guys around you and do those safety shots. So
Yeah, and I think that just kind of speaks to the reality of war. And war is hell. It's like one of the worst things that humans do to each other, and the worst parts of humanity come out in that environment.
Yeah.
And I think that's why having a strong sense of morality and belief in a higher power is really important, because it's gonna keep you more level-headed. But the reality is, it's not a game. It's not a joke. It's horrible. It's like, I mean, war is brutal. And they really speak to that. I said to Steven, while we were watching, I said, those guys are ruined. And you were like, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, they just are. Like, I can just see it kind of behind their eyes, like in the video. Like they're still in it. They're planning on going back, so they're still ramped up and in it. But those guys have had to do so much stuff that when they come back and settle in, if they survive and they come back and settle in and try to go back to some kind of normal life, it's going to be tough for them. They're going to have it's going to be a hard recovery mentally to come out of that and shift out of that zone. It just changes you. And I
mean, it's obviously doable though. I mean,
it's doable.
You look at like some of the guys who served in world wars and stuff like that. They were there for a long period of time too. Like,
yeah,
years.
but those guys came back so messed up. They just didn't know. They just didn't understand it. It's like that podcast from that old flamethrower guy on the Sean Ryan show.
Yeah.
It kind of cracked me up because he was talking about like, we back in my day, we just didn't have like PTSD and stuff. But then he starts explaining like all the struggles that he had. And I was like, bro, it's a mental destruction, dude. They just didn't know what it was, dude.
Yeah.
It tears parts of your soul away. I think, but it's rough, and but that's the reality. It's and it's a nasty business, and I think that's something that I really appreciated, that they didn't really, like, I could tell they were holding back, but they were just straight up like, yeah, sometimes you just can't take prisoners. Like, basically, like, we're just killing people, and that's the way it goes. I think a lot of people are very kind of influenced by, the way Hollywood projects war, and also the way America specifically does things. America goes out of its way, way out of its way, to be pretty good in a war environment.
And you got to understand your enemy, and your enemy is not going to do that. So,
but America also goes hard in the paint in the very beginning of the fight, and that's something that doesn't get a lot of airtime. But there is some, like, very historically, just look around, beginning of a conflict, hard in the paint. Yeah. Lots of death, lots of destruction.
Fallujah, dude.
Or even like when we first invaded Baghdad.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, 48 hours of just cruise missiles just ripping that city apart, dude. And then tanks rolling in. So America likes to violence of action, heavy hitting, and then take over. And then they're able to, like, oh, okay, prisoners of war, come over here, consolidation, they're treating everybody pretty well for the most part. But dude, there's a lot of death before you get to that point. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people might listen to that and be like, oh, or they watch the video, and when they talk about that, like even Garand Thumb said, like, some people were like, oh man, in the video he says something like that, and it's like, yeah, it might be shocking, but that's just the reality. There's no way around it. There's not like a, well, you guys are wrong, like you're supposed to. No, that's just, dude, like, pick up a history book. You don't have to take my word for it.
Yeah,
it's war. It's nasty business. So I think really coming to terms with that, especially for those of you that might not have a lot of that training or experience from that professional setting, like that military setting, but if you're really, and that's okay. I'm just saying, if you're really one of those people that is taking this seriously, and I've ran into it a lot. There's been a lot of people that are like, yeah, but I think, maybe you've, like, I've had people literally tell me, like, yeah, but I think you focus too much on that. Like, there's no telling what, it's like, no, there is telling, actually, because we have history books, and war's not new to humanity, and every single war ever has been gross and horrible. And you gotta put up or shut up. Really, it's kill or be killed is what it comes down to a lot of times, unfortunately. So, and that's really what it sounds like they're going through over there. But yeah, I just, that was something I kind of wanted to talk about towards the end of the episode, but you started kind of getting into it. So I was just like, dude, we'll just go for it right here. Cause I don't say that, I don't say all that lightly. Like I say that because it's, you need to come to terms with it and understand it, that these things we talk about and these things that we prepare for, we joke around and have a fun time, and there's a lot of giggling and tomfoolery that happens on the podcast, but this stuff is very serious at the end of the day, and people die, and most of the time die over stupid mistakes that are avoidable. So gotta take it seriously. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Just to get on another one here, night fighting. So one of the most illuminating portions of the video was when they started talking about being effective at fighting at night.
Yeah. Dude, I was blown away when he talked about the fact that they literally have like one guy with night vision, and then they're all just daisy chained off each other, moving from veg block to veg block.
The Russian conscripts.
Yeah. I was like, what? And they're like, yep, we're gonna make this is gonna be an easy day, boys.
Yeah,
basically.
Dude.
Like,
yeah, and that's before we even get into the nuance that they talked about in there. There's been a lot of stuff in the gun community recently. I've been seeing a lot of like videos and people going live and little captions and stuff, and on like gun Instagram, about like, oh, there's this, like, there's people out there that they pick their thing and they're like, if you don't have this or if you don't do this, you're going to die. And it's very black and white, and that's not the way it actually is. And, people are kind of trying to, I don't know, you know what I mean? There's been this new shift towards like, oh, if anybody ever gives you an absolute, like, oh, do this or you're going to die,
then they're
stupid. Well, unfortunately, call me stupid if you want, but this is one of those things.
I'm going to call you a Sith.
Oh, a Sith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you deal in absolute.
Which is an absolute statement, so.
Exactly. Well.
No. I hate you. So, yeah, again, if you do not have night fighting equipment, i.e. night vision at a minimum, and probably thermal, then you're going
to be on the other side of that statement.
You're going to die.
Saying that it's going to be easy work. Yeah.
You're going to die. Yeah. It's just part of the modern battle space. It's part of it. If you're going to fight at night, then you need to be able to see, and you need to be able to detect enemies at night. If you can't, then don't fight at night.
Yeah.
If you don't have that stuff, then stick to daytime fighting, because you're going to get smoked. And they talk about it in that video. I mean, Russia has always been like, they don't give a crap about their people.
No.
They just throw people in waves. That's like even just something as simple as the Chernobyl disaster. Do you know they cleared all that radioactive material off the building? They sent people out there in waves and swept it off the building.
I'll just say, just their mining alone, dude, just like sending the dudes in to just dig out holes. It's like all those dudes died, dude.
Yeah. Dude.
We're going to mine like our fathers.
Yeah. Shout out to the HBO Chernobyl show. It's actually one of my favorite shows ever. It's so good. Such a good show. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's like, I don't know. It's only 5 episodes long, but it is so good. It's one of my all-time favorite TV series shows.
No, that's it's great. It depicts it perfectly.
And the acting is just top notch in it. It's such good acting.
Man, what a crazy event. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just an example of like
not giving a flying flop.
Yeah, dude. The fact that they talked about
killed the whole world too, and just didn't give a crap either, dude.
Yeah. They have a guy that just sits at the front of the line holding the night vision unit and just literally daisy chained together, holding hands.
Just, hey, hold on to my pocket, bud. I'll lead you to the promised land.
Just centipeding around through the environment. And then they're just getting picked off, and they said they just scatter. They just scatter into oblivion.
I mean, what else would you do, dude? Like, if the lead dude gets killed, what are you doing?
You're running off.
If you're like toward the tail end, you're not getting to that night vision, so you just like, why is everyone running?
Yeah, and they said they just pick them off. They just pick them off, dude. That's crazy, dude.
Oh, dude, it blew me away at that part. I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, going back to what you just said, like, if you don't have the capability to fight, why are you even attempting?
Well, because they're being told to, or they'll be shot. You got to push forward to this position, or we'll shoot you here. That's the situation those guys are in. I guarantee it. Those conscripts, and they were saying earlier in the thing that they've got a few days of training, and they're just
don't they use
the
what's it called? Who's the people that Russia's all like in with, and they're like the Muslim,
the Chechens?
Yeah, the Chechens. Aren't they kind of like they're like enforcers a little
Yeah.
bit? They use them behind to like basically force everyone to do what they need them to do.
Yeah, and I guess they're punishing.
And they're like beheading people and stuff. I think
they are 100%. They're
the pit bulls, dude.
Yeah, and they are radical. Those dudes are wild. We fought some of those guys in Afghanistan because they're so just radical Muslim. So they're like, we will kill the infidel, and they're just crazy Russians that are just radically Islamic.
It's like just the weirdest combo, dude.
Yeah. And they just freaking hate Christians and Western society. So they just would come into Afghanistan, not even their fight, but they just come across just to fight Americans, you know?
Oh, man. So
anyways, but yeah, those guys are wild. But yeah, getting back into the night fighting stuff. Something that they touched on, well, first of all, backing up, if you're going to fight at night, you got to have night vision at a minimum, probably thermal. They talked about thermal a bunch and how it's a huge part of the fight.
Having guys with thermal,
yeah.
I think. Not necessarily, like, not everyone needs to have thermal, but definitely at least have it.
Yeah.
As a capability.
Yep.
If everyone can have it, then cool, even better. But I know that's tough.
Yeah. Everyone should have night vision, though.
Yeah.
But jumping right from that is they talked heavily about passive aiming. And this has been a hot button topic throughout recent gun culture. You know, you've got people that are like, yeah, you know, you don't have to have piggyback optics for passive aiming. And then you've got other guys that are like, oh, you have to, like, you know, if you have a laser, you're going to die.
You're an idiot for having a laser.
Yeah, and really, it's like, dude, they both are important tools, and they both serve a purpose. Again, it depends on who you're fighting.
Understand your enemy. Going back to
yep
everything we've been saying. Understand your enemy.
If you're fighting somebody that's using night vision, you better be passive aiming.
Yep.
One of the best lines in the entire video is when the fellow paratrooper bro is explaining night fighting, and he says, yeah, we've had guys be like, oh, let's lasso to show our position. And he's like, how about not? Because we don't want to have a tank shoot at us. He says something along those lines.
Yeah.
Just really take that in. It's like you gear up you fire off your IR laser and lasso that thing, which is a common tactic used by
us.
Yeah, we used
10
it all
years
the time
ago
because we weren't fighting people that had night vision.
Yeah.
So, dude, we used it like crazy.
You can thank your current president for everyone having night vision nowadays, because it's been shipped all over the world.
Yeah.
Back when
all the Taliban has it now.
Yeah, back when we were, there was ITAR, and we were like super like conservative with the fact that no one needed to know about this, but now we've just sent it out to everyone and anybody and everybody, like, just like, hey, yeah, here you go, here's some night vision. Here's some night vision, like we've loaded Ukraine up with it, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like
we left it all for the Taliban in Afghanistan. Dude,
which means it's gotten into China's hands. It's all
everywhere
over now.
Yep, it's a part, and again, it's a part of the modern battle space. It's night fighting capability is in the hands of most fighting forces.
Yep.
Even like your drug cartels and stuff have it.
Oh yeah,
dude,
absolutely.
It's out there. Really, the only realistic situation I'd say that you might have an advantage and be able to go full active IR and everything is if it was just like a civil unrest and you were fighting like,
Chads.
Yeah, just what's the word I'm looking for? Like warlord type people just trying to like, yeah, we're going to like rape and pillage, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could go button those people up. No problem. And there's a high chance they probably wouldn't have night vision. But even now it's like, dude, it's so commercially available and it's become commonplace. And you've got idiots on podcasts like us who are like, you should have night vision. So then, you know, people go buy it and, no, but you get the picture. It's out there. It's a modern implement. It's just part of the space now. So understanding how to passively aim is huge. But again, that line just really brought reality down for me. Cause it's like, yeah, you're punching around with an IR laser. Cool. Then you got a tank zeroing in on your position, lobbing rounds at you, just freaking ripping, dude. That's eye opening. If you're fighting anybody that has any kind of aerial power, don't be touching your IR stuff.
Yeah.
Don't use active signatures. That'll get picked up like no time flat. And then you've got a JDAM getting just shoved into your forehead.
Yep.
So
I think an argument for the IR is, you know, obviously if you're in a firefight, depending on your situation, I mean, you're having to shoot a whole bunch of rounds.
Like once you're already kinetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, well,
yeah. I mean, I see that too, but
it depends on how much signature reduction you have the capability of too. And it's like,
yeah, if you're all running
if you're in
cans,
like a full blown firefight, like where you're talking like they know where you're at in that situation, especially like you're running cans, your cans start getting hot, dude. If anyone's running IR or thermal, yeah, you're glowing like a Christmas tree. Anyway,
night vision too, because once they start actually illuminating because of the heat,
yeah,
your IR easily picks it up.
Yep. So I mean, there's I don't know. It's just understanding. I think that's why you just need to have both. There's no reason not to have both. And if I was going to do one and not the other, I would probably drop the laser just because the red dot serves at least the way I'm set up, you know, on my rifle with an LPVO and then a 12 o'clock mounted red dot. It has more purpose there during day and night. It's not just for nighttime shooting. So if I were going to lose one, I would probably keep my red dot in that situation. But
yeah,
I like using the laser though. If I can use an illuminator.
Oh yeah.
Especially for indoor stuff. Like sometimes it's too dark for your night vision to even pick up on like what's going on. So being able to illuminate is kind of a must. So
yeah. Again, having both. I mean, the laser has huge advantages. Like it's a lot faster and easier to engage at night with the laser.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then from target identification purposes too, like being able to illuminate your target versus like, hey, just using my red dot and just hoping that that's actually enemy. You know? Yeah. That's kind of a scary thing too, because it's like you don't want to have friendly fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just think though, if you're gonna set up to shoot at night, you gotta have passive.
Yeah.
Like have the capability.
Yep.
12 o'clock mounted optic, or you know, a high rise mounted optic that if you're just running a dot, something that you're able to use with night vision, or shoot occluded if need be, and go practice. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's a lot harder than just aiming, you know, and you can be, you know, you can get to the point where you're pretty effective. Like with my setup, I can shoot out to 300 meters passive pretty easily. But once you go out farther, if you are shooting occluded, like if you're running like PVS 14s and your left eye's looking through nods and right eye's looking through your dot, you know, that starts to the like accuracy depreciates.
Yeah.
So, things to consider, you know, and that's why you run a swing arm and you can swing it over and right eye that thing and passive aim that way, and that works great. But then you can be more accurate. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying don't use a laser, but I'm saying all the people out there that are like, you don't need passive aiming, like I think there's a lot of people trying to justify not having to buy two optics, which I totally get. That sucks. That's tough. But they in the video multiple times they talked about really enjoying having a variable optic of some kind because the ranges vary so much out there. And they will pretty much anywhere, even in like a city. And then a dot, a 1 power something for passive aiming mounted 12 o'clock. They were saying that setup's perfect. And I agree. From everything we've done, you know, and all the training we do and the different stuff we've tested, that variable magnification optic with a 12 o'clock mounted dot, that's the way to go. Works great. Nice. Again, that all comes back to daytime stuff too. You want to be effective in the daytime,
Yeah.
And for most situations, having some magnification is going to be critical in daytime.
Yeah, and that's going back to target identification again. Like you're talking about longer distances, you want to get proper ID before you just start popping shots off at individuals that maybe you don't want to shoot.
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah, and a lot of people try to, again, they get hyper focused on the CQB side of things, which is just one aspect of a huge dynamic array of warfare. You can do a lot with a magnified optic inside. I mean, like again, looking back at Afghanistan, a lot of us are running ACOGs, and dude, ACOG was nice. You had a little bit of magnification. You could get some in it. They're crystal clear too. They're prism optics, so they're just super sharp.
I still want one.
And yeah, I do too. Actually, I want to set up a build with one. But LPVOs are great. MPVOs, your 2 to 10s, your 3.6 to 18, different things like that, dude. Having that magnification, even low end, like that 4-power ACOG, really nice. And then on that low end, dude, super usable inside a close quarters situation. And if you've already got that 12 o'clock mounted optic, then whatever, you got a 1-power right up top, good high head position, so it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Is it a lot of money? Yep. But that's just the way. That's it. That's the way it is.
That's why it's an
investment, man.
Like all these people who collect like all these guns and stuff. It's like, man, do you have one good solid setup?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have one good solid setup, then start selling off some of your.
Look at me and you, for example. How much have we trimmed the fat on our dude? We don't have a bunch of guns anymore.
No,
we have a few, but dude, I used to have over 30 guns. I had all kinds of random guns.
Yeah. I
have like 5 right now.
Yeah.
Including like my handguns.
Mm-hmm.
And why? Well, because dude, as soon as I started trying to buy all this other stuff, I started realizing like, okay, well, realistically, I need one good reliable rifle.
Yeah.
And that rifle has to have a lot of support on it to be able to even stand up to the modern battlefield.
Yep.
A
good reliable rifle, a laser, an optic, a secondary optic for passive aiming,
thermal clip
on, suppressor. Like, I mean, it starts getting
light.
Yeah.
A good lighting system. A good Surefire all set up with switches and everything. That's going to set you back $500 easy.
Yeah.
Right there. That's it.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. Thousands of dollars. I mean, your rifle set up, with your clip on and everything. Where do you think you're sitting right now?
I don't even want.
I think you're sneaking up on $8,000. Easily, or no, you're probably sneaking up on $10,000.
I think it's more. It's got a Leupold Mark V. It's got an aim-point T1. It's got a RC3 Surefire. I got the D2. I got the flex, dude.
It's a Noveski.
I got the RH25 clip-on, dude. Oh,
yeah. It's expensive. So, and I know. Trust me, I know. And I hate.
It hurts me, dude.
I hate to be the guy. Or I don't ever want to come off as the guy that's like, you have to have all this. But if you're serious about it, you do have to have it. You can't buy it all at once. Keep in mind, we've been buying this stuff over a length of years.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford it all at once. I don't make that kind of money. Dude, my Mark 12 build that I have.
Yeah, I think I got my T1
expensive.
Back in 2012.
Yeah. I got mine around the same time.
So.
Still holding true, dude.
Dude, it's holding true. It's beat up, though. It's got the battle scars, man.
Oh, yeah.
I need to hit it with a little paint.
But yeah, no, it's I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I just want to make it clear that I think a lot of people, and we get the questions and stuff. It's like, how do you guys like budget for it? And it's like, man, there's different ways, and I'm not going to give you like financial advice, but basically I pick one thing. I'm like, well, this is next. I'm going to start chunking money away to save up for this, but I never compromise the things that matter right now. I think I don't want this to shift too far into that topic, but just while we're on it, like keep in mind that we're living our lives right now. I've got a family, I've got kids. You should never take money out of keeping that thing going.
Yeah.
To make it work,
Yep.
If that means you're saving less, then you're saving less, and it's going to take longer, and it just is what it is. And don't worry about it.
But you know what? That doesn't hurt anything either. That's a you should have a good backup fund. So if something were to pop off, like a medical disaster or something, yeah, that might have been set aside for a thermal clip-on. But guess what? You have that money now to pay for your hospital bills or whatever. That happens. So it's not like. It's not that you're taking money still. Like, if you're saving money and it's not money that's taking food off the table, you're not taking money out of your family's fund. Like, yeah, there could be that chance that, you dropped that money on the thermal and then all of a sudden something happens right after that. That kind of sucks. That's bad timing. But sometimes it happens. Maybe you got to sell it. Maybe you got to pick up some overtime or whatever it may be. But,
I mean, you should have some savings too.
Yeah. No, I think so too. But I'm just saying, like, it's still a good emergency fund is what I'm saying, regardless. Right. Even if it's, you're intending to spend that money, it's still a backup. It's still backup funds that you own. So it's not like it's hurting anything by saving up for the items that you want.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So a couple other things on night fighting. Obviously the passive aiming's huge. Again, in the video, great points on that. There's a lot of stuff out there that can detect infrared signatures. So light discipline is humongous. Everything is amplified under night vision. I think the ratio is 1 by 10,000. So 1 candlelight by 10,000 is the typical intensifier tube ratio. So, dude, a backlight on a G-Shock watch, a GPS, that looks like the sun under night vision.
Yeah.
And you can spot that at great distances, especially with mil-spec, like high intensity, very sensitive instruments, like detection systems. There's a lot of that kind of stuff out there.
Yeah.
They even referenced systems that Russia uses to detect the reflection during daytime from optics.
Yeah.
And it'll shoot a laser at it. Crazy stuff. So maintaining, making sure everything reflective, like the guy in the video, I thought this was a really good tip. They're running like phones for ATAC and stuff like that, which is pretty wild. I was never cool enough. I don't have experience with that stuff. I was never cool enough to run any of that kind of stuff while I was in.
Yeah.
But they tape up all of their
lenses.
Every lens, every light on their phone, tape it up. Your phone uses an IR light. Like when you use your Face ID, for example, on an iPhone, at night, you'll see that little dim red light pop on for a second. It's IR light. Under night vision, that looks crazy. That's like, that's a beam. So that'll give you away, and you might not even know.
Yeah, and it flashes like trying to do the face recognition. Like if you hold it up and it's trying to recognize your face.
Yeah.
It's just like sending out constant. So it's like, I think you can go into the settings and like turn that off if you needed to. But like if you are planning on running a phone up on a chest rig, I would try to like turn off all that crap. But yeah, you're still going to want to tape off all your lenses because you don't want to have any potential, light getting casted out upon the universe. It kind of goes back to the flashlight thing, covering up your flashlights, any circular objects. But like, the 100 Concepts caps are fantastic. And like even in the daytime, dude, like me and you were just messing around the other day, and like I was just like, man, that like there's on my rifle, I don't have my cap on it, and I was just like, dude, the light, if you don't have that cap on, like it just pops, like you can see that like just shiny, like the reflective cone in the light, you can just see that from a distance.
Oh yeah,
even in like. You were standing back in a dark room, and I was out in the light, like daylight, bright daylight, and I could see it in the dark room. That's all I could see was just the head of the flashlight. It's like, dude, you gotta have that covered, dude. It's a dead giveaway.
Yep. Yeah, it's a big deal. And also, things still reflect at nighttime. Like for example, one of the weirdest things I remember first time I ever noticed it, I was like, whoa, that is wild to me. But you have a shadow at nighttime.
Yeah.
You literally have a shadow. You put night vision on and you can see your shadow and you're like, whoa, what? Like it kind of blows your mind. because you can't see it at all. Like there's no it. You would think, well, there's no sunlight. I don't have a shadow. Put night vision on, and now all the light's amplified. You'll have a shadow. Crazy. So there's still ambient light, and it can still reflect off of stuff. And again, if you're using something that amplifies the ambient light, like night vision, you're going to see those reflections. So yeah, gotta maintain that light discipline and that ARD, that anti-reflective device discipline. Maintaining, if you need to use light, securing things and making sure you don't have light pollution.
Yeah.
So do the old poncho over the head method.
Yep, red light doesn't travel as far in the nighttime, so yeah, little red light with a poncho or double poncho. Some guys double up if they don't have their ponchos are a little thin. Some of those ponchos are a little thinner than others, but that's just something you're gonna have to go out and try. Like have night vision on and have a guy throw on a poncho with red light from a little bit of a distance and see how well it covers up versus doubling down or versus not having one at all, so a little trial and error. Another thing, obviously we brought it up earlier, but like the suppressors are huge for night fighting as well.
Absolutely they are.
It's a must, and it's honestly a must for daytime fighting as well, but
so, I mean, it's one of the key pieces of equipment to reduce signature, and I think it has become again, it's one of those items that like I don't think it's as critical. I would maybe say, oh man, I don't know. I almost said get night vision first, but I actually don't know.
What?
For if you were going to have to prioritize one over the other,
night vision versus suppressor.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Get them both.
Get them both. I'm saying, like, which one do you get first?
I think you get the night vision.
I think you get the suppressor first.
Really?
Maybe. I don't know. Because you could always just not fight at night, was my thought process.
Yeah.
You just limit operations to the day and just lay low and don't do anything at night. If you don't have
You can get a suppressor, though, for so cheap now that I just feel like it's not even...
It's just part of it. That's true.
I mean, you don't have to go out and get, like...
An RC3?
Yeah, you don't have to go out and get an RC3.
Yeah. It's true. That's like...
the price tag on it, it's just, like, it's huge for no reason.
Dude, I mean...
it's a good can, but it's just, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good like Otter Creek Labs, for example, make some sick cans.
Great cans. Dude, you get the OCM5, I've been super impressed with.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty unique to
the
if
SPR,
you got a Mark 12,
dude.
but they make the I think it's called the polonium, and it's a direct thread, 1/2x28. It's like $600, dude. That's not that bad.
No.
So that's half the price of an RC2.
Yeah.
It's like a third of the price of an RC3. So
it's disgusting, dude.
So yeah, all goes back to equipment stuff. I know it's tough. It's a lot. But it's just, it's the way it is. And again, they talk about it a lot in the video, and they don't really hold back on it. They're like, you've got to have, they say multiple times, if you don't have night vision, then you're just going to get smoked.
Yeah.
And they've got direct real world experience from that. And this is really one of those things that, one of those reasons we really wanted to do this podcast, because it's a good opportunity to illuminate some real experience that's currently being used now. A lot of it connects to just tried and true, standard, fundamental skills. But it all comes down to just training. And they mention it several times, especially talking about like the conscripts and stuff, building experience and having training, good foundational understanding the basics at a high level. Like the basics done well and done right will take you so far.
Yep.
I think one of them at one point says, people get too focused on trying to be all high speed and buy this super cool gear, and I'm more referring to like Cryo Precision pants and, JPC 2.0 and a airframe helmet. And it's like, that stuff's all legit, but there's other things to prioritize. You can get by with some pretty basic mil-spec gear,
knockoff, dude.
Yeah. And be super effective.
I mean, obviously those guys are doing it. So
yeah. So go train. Go out.
It's not all about them, all about looking Gucci on the gram, dude.
Yeah. Who cares about that ultimately?
If it's effective, it's effective.
Yep. Dude, the amount of old surplus gear that you and I own.
Oh yeah.
Some of it from our time in, but
dude, I'm still rocking my Alice pack that I used my entire service.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's been souped up a little bit since then, but
yeah.
I mean, it's the same pack, dude.
Dude, I love the standard issue poncho.
Yeah.
It's a monster of a poncho. It's so sick.
I still use my standard issue bivy sack.
Yeah. The woobs.
The woobie. Still solid.
So good. Yeah, dude, there's so much stuff, though, that is just tried and true, works great.
Cheap.
A lot of guys that we train with use the old sleep system, dude. Works good. It's a big chongalonga, but it keeps you warm, man, and it does its job. Dude, yeah, the USGI bivy sack is legit. Like, and this stuff is affordable. You can just go to a surplus store or go online. We get asked a lot, like, yeah, I don't have a surplus store in my area. Dude, just Google, like, U.S. surplus, and you'll get a bunch of,
old Sarges,
random surplus stores that
from my Fayetteville boys
that are legit, dude. We bought, what's that one we bought a bunch of stuff from? They were super cool. They ended up like talking to us a little bit.
Dude,
I want to give them a shout out, and I can't remember their name now, but my bad. I was going to shout him out because the dude was super cool. Yeah, and dude, I'm telling you, there's ways around a lot of this. Your specialty equipment is going to require some investment.
Yeah.
That just is what it is. It's going to require an investment, but you can save a lot. You don't have to have like, some crazy boot that is just like, I don't know, $1,200. It's like, dude, there's so many awesome little like Rockies or Danners or something that are like maybe $200 and they just work great. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, you want to take care of your feet, but
yeah, take care of your feet.
I feel like that's not a great.
The probably wasn't a good example
choice of.
But I know people buy like, yeah, I bought these handmade. They were $950 boots, and it's like, whoa, dude, right on. I wear Loas. They're $300 boots, and they work great. So
yeah,
I don't know. You can really get away with some tried and true surplus gear. Is my point.
Yeah.
But training is something that you can't buy, and you cannot cheat it. You got to go do it. You got to work on it. You got to work with your boys. If you got a team, go out and work with them. That's something that oh man, it gets harder and harder. I know even for us recently, we've been so busy, it's been hard to do that.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of a bummer. And that ebb and flows, and that happens, and that's life. And again, it comes back to, we're all living the life we're living right now. And at the end of the day, we're preparing for something that might never come, but it's still important to go do. And, yeah, it's like what that British guy says at the end of the video. He's like, you don't want to sit around and be complacent, and then something happens and you just don't know what to do.
Yep.
And that's like, that feeling would be horrible. So
you just became that guy.
Go out and train, put this stuff to practice. But yeah, that's pretty much all we got.
Yeah.
A little bit of a different episode. I think it's good though. I think there's some really good lessons in there. I highly encourage you to watch that video if you haven't already. If you've made it this far and you decided to listen to our podcast first, right on. But now go kind of put the pieces together with that video, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. I encourage you to do some homework. Use it to look at your own kit setups and what you got going on. Maybe think about what you're buying and what you own already. Are there things you can get rid of that just don't matter anymore? Like that, that AR build that's got red anodizing all over it that you just look at. Is that something you can just sell off and replace with something that makes a little more sense?
Yeah.
No. You know what I mean, though? Like, if you've got that random handgun that's cool and you shoot it every once in a while, do you really need it, or can you sell it and buy a suppressor instead? So, yeah. Anything else?
No, I mean, thanks to Garand Thumb for sharing the knowledge that he did.
Yeah, honestly, good. Yeah,
we
definitely shout him
like
out.
That.
He's got one of the biggest platforms in the gun industry, probably the biggest. I mean, he's well over 1 million on YouTube alone, and dude, he's got a big influence. That's amazing, and he's putting out some really solid, just tried and true soldiering knowledge.
Yep.
And some really just very practical gear conversation too. So yeah, pretty awesome. It's awesome to have somebody like him in the community. Yeah. So sorry for the delay in between our episodes. We should be able to crank them out again. We do have some busy months ahead. We've got a lot of training coming up. We're running our medical class quite a few times here in the near future. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. And we've got some new classes on the horizon. So yeah, if you ever want to come train with us, hit us up. We're running we've got some pretty awesome training programs, and we're going to be really getting into some of these infantry basics, and we've got some really cool courses on the horizon that we've been working on, and we're going to hopefully get out there. And yeah, keep an eye out for the website. We're going to be putting a lot of stuff on there. We really want to make that a place where listeners can come and peruse the website and get a lot of this gear, and we're going to try to really hand select it. We've been going through a long period of really trying to figure out what do we want to have.
A lot of trial and error.
Yeah, lots of testing going on.
We don't want to suggest things that we wouldn't personally run ourselves. So
yep,
everything kind of gets our stamp of approval, and that's why sometimes we'll offer something, but then end up pulling it down because something comes out later, like after we've been running it for, we thought we ran it long enough to get the stamp of approval, and then later it's like, I don't know. It's a little weird how that business is handling whatever it may be or whatever. So
yeah, that matters too. Like if there's a business that's being stupid and we don't like what they're doing, then we'll not support them. So, I think that factors into a lot of it too. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there waiting on holsters. They're coming. So thank you for your patience. We just shipped out a huge slew of orders.
Yep.
So again, part of it was because we were out of the shop for a little bit because of vacation and different work schedules and stuff like that. But I just sent out a big chunk of packages at the post office, and so yeah, lots of holsters going out to people. Thank you for those of you that supported us like that. It really helps us, and we appreciate it. It's a big help to support us that way through our website and ordering stuff, and that's why I mentioned that we're really trying to be a good hub for kind of that modern Minuteman equipment, and we got a lot of stuff coming soon for that. I know we probably have said that a lot recently, but like going back to what we just said, we really do put in the work to make sure it's going to make sense, and we're not just randomly selling stuff to sell it. We're trying to put things together that are very curated, and we even got some products we're working on that'll be kind of put together. That'll be kind of one-stop shop kind of things. I don't want to get too far into that yet, but we're still working on it. So we'll keep you updated on that, but definitely check out the website if you haven't already. And Instagram is a great way to support us too. Go follow there. We're going to have some more Minuteman minutes coming out on the Minutemen Initiative Instagram. So kind of in between filming and editing and stuff right now for that, but we've got some more Minuteman minutes that are going to come out there, the little short form content. And then hopefully, now that we're getting closer to the summer here in Alaska, some of our long form videos are going to be hitting the YouTube. So
yeah,
it's kind of a weird time of year here, so it's hard to film. It's like nasty. It's like we still have snow, but it melts every day, and then it snows at night, and then it's like it's muddy and weird, and so we're kind of in a weird period where it's kind of hard to get content right now. But yeah, thanks again. We really appreciate everybody that listens. It means a lot, and yeah, we're excited to get back on task here with the podcast, and we should have another one coming out here pretty soon.